Morning, everyone, and welcome to the work session of the Anne Arundel County Council. That is the first of two this week that we're going to be having. So in case you're confused, this is the morning session. Next time we're going to be talking about just the GDP, but we will talk about the GDP at the end of the agenda today. We're beginning this morning with a presentation by Mr. Frederick Delp of the National Alliance on Mental Health.
Madam Chair, should I call a quick roll?
Yes, that would probably be a great idea. Like I said, I didn't finish my coffee.
Okay, let's try this. Ms. Lacey.
Present, I think.
Ms. Pickard. I know Ms. Pickard was getting some more coffee too, so we'll come right back to her. Mr. Volkey.
Present.
Mr. Pruski.
Here.
Ms. Fiedler. Ms. Fiedler joining us a few minutes late this morning. Ms. Radbian.
Present.
Ms. Hare.
Present.
Ms. Linda Schuett.
Present.
Ms. Susan Smith.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
All right, Ms. Pickard should be joining us any moment, and Ms. Fiedler also a little bit late this morning. So that's where we're
at. Well, it was my understanding that we should still go ahead and roll into our presentation this morning. If you would bring Mr. Delp forward. You're muted, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred Delp. I'm the Executive Director of NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, Anne Arundel County. We're the Anne Arundel County affiliate. It's interesting when we have our meetings, normally when I'm not giving a presentation, I ask for raise of hands, how many knew or know what NAMI is, and very few people raise their hands. How about all of you? Have you heard of NAMI before, yes or no? Okay, a few of you have. I don't know if it's our national organization or what, but somehow the word doesn't get out real well. We think we've done a great job in Anne Arundel County, and you'll see later all the groups that we work with. So go ahead, you can move the next slide. Okay, and that's a little bit above our booth when we go out. Next one. Okay, so NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, was formed in 1979. It's a group of parents got together about their loved ones and their struggle with mental illness. And there's 1,200 affiliates nationally. Our headquarters in Washington. Columbia, Maryland's our state headquarters, and we have 14 Maryland affiliates. Basically, NAMI is the largest grassroots organization that works with the people with mental illness and with their families to help promote better mental health in the situation they're in. As you can imagine with COVID, it's really getting tougher and tougher. More people are coming forward out of the shadows or out of the stigma with their mental illness. And how COVID has really made it worse for a lot of them. The loneliness, the places they can't get out and do anything. They're sort of locked in. A lot of the behavioral programs that we have are all closed down, and they're scrambling to try to get the people and help them. But it's been very difficult. So basically, we're the largest grassroots organization. We're family people. We're lay people. We're not psychiatrists. We're not therapists. And we do a lot of great work, which we'll go into. Next slide. We're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, charitable. We have a board of directors. We have monthly executive committee meetings or monthly board meetings. We reach out to the consumer. The consumer was the word NAMI uses for the person with a mental illness, with bipolar, schizophrenia, or PTSD, or OCD. And we work closely with the family members and caregivers just as much because families are suffering greatly. Divorce, money, just all kind of issues and problems. The parents, family members are having such a hard time with the struggles. And believe me, the struggles aren't just about the illness. It's just how it manifests itself in so many ways. We partner with a lot of groups in Anne Arundel County. We're very involved with all kinds of groups and agencies in Anne Arundel County. We're all nonprofit, and we don't have paid members. We just receive money, little grants or donations, fundraising things like we do a gala, our memberships, we do a NAMI walk, things like that. Next slide. I don't know how much you know, but I threw up a few facts here. Like 1 out of 4 adults, roughly 60 million Americans, exhibit some type of mental illness in any given year. And I mean, it could be mild depression, or it could be very strong, or it could be hospitalization, but roughly these are the numbers. And 1 out of 17 live with a serious mental illness, such as major depression or schizophrenia or bipolar. Bipolar and schizophrenia seem to be the two that we hear the most about, although obsessive compulsive disorder is getting to be very strong with a lot of people. Sadly, 1 out of 10 children live with a serious mental illness or some kind of emotional disorder. And then just briefly, one fact is about half of all the cases begin by age 14 and 3/4 by age 24. In our support groups, we see this over and over, where parents come to us that their son or daughter in high school or beginning college started having a psychosis and problems, and then they end up hospitalized or diagnosed. A sad fact is that fewer than 1/3 of all these people do get any help. They just aren't receiving any help. It's really difficult. Next slide. Next one. Just going backwards here. Yeah. Mission statement. This is us. We're dedicated to improving the quality of the lives of individuals affected by mental illness and providing support for the family, friends, and caregivers. And this is 2 areas here, not just the person with the illness, but we're supporting and helping the family, the friends, and the caregivers, parents, friends. They don't know what to do, how to react, how to help their person, what to say. They're on pins and needles. Where are they going to go next? They're afraid. They're the stigma, all these different issues. So we help the family and friends and caregivers just as much as the ones with the mental illness. And our slogan for all is, a lot of people take our classes and they find out you are not alone in this fight. There's so many people, thousands and thousands in our county that are involved in this, that you're not alone in this fight to help each other. Next. So our volunteers, they serve as leaders in our group or on our board of directors. We advocate for improved services. We teach, mentor, and facilitate support groups and classes. We reach out to the community, all the partnerships we have. We put together publications. We give our own support financially. And best of all, we listen to others, such as you, your group, and others, to see where we need to improve or get some more help. The key one there is teach, mentor, and facilitate support groups. That's 80% of everything we do, all the different classes and support groups that we do. Next. So we basically do 4 things: advocacy, training, education, and support. For advocacy, we do our annual NAMI Advocacy Day to our state legislature and officials. We just did it in February, where we did it on Zoom, and we met with various meetings with our delegates and our senators, reviewed with them the latest bills going through involving mental illness, discussed with them the talking points of why this is important and what's happening. In addition, we do it all year round. We're lucky in Arundel County, as Annapolis is, so we go down there a lot. Many of the members of our state delegates and senators are members of our group. So we get to speak to them quite frequently, and they're all very supportive of mental health problems, issues, money, our programs, and what we do. So we work with various government agencies. We work with all the hospitals, other nonprofit related groups. We advocate for mental health funding. A lot of years, the mental health funding is cut back. We advocate for more funding each year. This year, we're asking for a 5% increase in our state budget for that. We try to work to reduce the stigma. The stigma of mental illness is overwhelming in some places. It seems to improve sometimes, but maybe then takes a step backward. By stigma, I mean the people that don't want to talk to somebody because they have a mental illness. They don't want to associate with them. They're afraid of them. A good example is a lady gives us she came to our support group and said, my husband went in for a triple bypass. Our neighbors came and visited us, gave us cakes, pies, made meals, and everything was fine. But as soon as our son went in the hospital for a breakdown and a mental illness, they wouldn't speak to us anymore. So the stigma against families or people with mental illness is very strong out there. We try to alleviate that and try to help that. And then we also support an annual NAMI walk, where we're out giving advocacy to people in our walk as we're talking. Next. Education. We do a lot of courses and a lot of things for people. We provide mental health education classes. We have various ones, which I'm going to speak about in a moment. We speak to various civic organizations. I'm always out there speaking to various groups, as you're allowing me to do with you today, to help them better understand mental illness and how we can help. And we can provide information pamphlets to people, and we facilitate our nominee signature programs. As far as speaking to various groups, like instead of everybody knows about the hospital, you can take somebody to the hospital with a problem or issue, things like that. But we try to help people better understand how the hospitals work if somebody's going to a hospital for a mental health crisis. Or a lot of people might say, what is this CIT in Arundel County? Well, that's the crisis intervention team. People don't understand who they are and what they do. So when we speak to organizations, we explain all these different groups, and same as for our classes. Next. And training. Our people are trained to be facilitators. Like I said, we're not psychiatrists, we're not therapists, but a lot of us have gone through this with our sons or daughters. I have a son, 45, that's been going through this, and I've been working with him for 30 years on his mental illness. So we've learned a lot. We've learned how the system works, the good parts of this mental health system, the poor parts of the mental health system. We've learned about medicines, doctors, various things about mental illness that we pass on to others. So we are then trained. We go through training to teach a class or to be a facilitator for a class. And then we are all trained. We train others to go through other classes. And all the training is completely free of charge. NAMI Maryland gives us that free training, which comes down from national to state, then to us. And then as new programs emerge all the time, every year there's a new program that emerges, one or two. We'll undergo training for those programs also. Next. Now, this is our signature programs. We have 4 signature programs. We have many others, but the 4 signature programs, the first one is Family to Family. This is our most popular course. Every time it's booked up months in advance. And this is a 6-week course, and it's free for any caregiver, a family member, to learn about mental illness. You have to have someone that you're a family member with mental illness, a friend with mental illness, someone you're a caregiver to. And this is basically the outline of the course. We're learning all about the brain, the mood episodes, understanding the medications, inside mental illness. We do some problem solving, how to communicate better, how to have self-care, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to help that person. So these are the various topics. Like we do 3 of these a year. We're trying to expand out to 4. We are going to start one April 7th. Coming up. You're welcome to join that if you would be interested. Our most popular class, and it's really nice when we've done them in person around a room where people get to meet each other, and they walk out each week say, hey, I never realized this. I'm not alone in this. Right now with COVID, we've had to go to Zoom, and we've done the last 2 classes on Zoom, and the one in April will probably be on Zoom also until we can get through the COVID crisis. This is our most popular course right here. Next. The other 3 support programs are peer-to-peer, family support, and connections. Peer-to-peer is the same course as the family of family, basically, but it's for the peers. It's for the ones with the mental illness. So they have a program, and basically some of those same things that the family of family teaches, this class teaches. It has to be taught, though, by a peer, one that has a mental illness, that has had a recovery and are doing pretty well in life right now. And that one, we're looking to start a spring class on peer-to-peer. We're looking for the date right now. But these are taught, a person with a parent can't go in the class. It's just for those that have the illness. Then our support groups. The family support group, we meet twice a month on those. Basically, it's a class where people come in, 15 people or 8 or 10, and they'll sit around and we'll go through each person's story for a minute, and then we'll help each other out. Facilitators will lead the group, bring up discussion areas. People ask questions. What does the HIPAA law mean? What is the CIT? What does our county police do? What is the mental health agency? Is there support in our county from our health department? All kinds of questions, things you may never even think of. So we discuss these in our family support group and try to help each other out. The same thing is the people, the consumers with the mental illness, have the connection support group. They meet twice a month on a Sunday too. And they do the same thing, go around the room, talk to each other, help each other out, problems that they're having with their illness, any help they can get from each other for the next day or where they're going or what they're doing. Many of them don't work. Many of them are struggling at home or they're in a behavioral group or what, and they come up and try to help each other out. Our groups do really well. In fact, they've grown so much that now they do like every other week they try to do a pizza party or a bowling party, because a lot of these people are lonely. They don't have any friends. They may not even have any family supports. Some people just won't support them. So that's our support group. Those are the 4 main programs called the signature programs: family to family, peer to peer, family support group, and connections. Next. In addition, there's a lot of other programs. FaithNet is a program where you get involved with churches, caring faith communities, and promoting the role of faith in the recovery. We have probably in the past year, 25 churches have called us, and we've gone in to speak to congregations or their leaders, from Catholic to Protestant to Jewish, you name it. We've been many of these churches, because think of the numbers I said at the beginning, 1 out of every 4. If you got a congregation of 100 people, there's 10, 20 people that are suffering. And pastors, whoever is leading your church, they do not have all the answers. They're not trained in mental illness. And so we go in and maybe we'll give a whole class to just their church, not open it to the community like all the other ones are. The other one is in our own voice. This is where a presentation to the public by consumer. We have 3 people going through this training right now, where they will go out and speak to the Lions Club or to the Rotary Club or to your group or something about their mental illness, what happened, where it started, how they went through it, and their recovery. So they're promoting the awareness and the possibility of recovery. So that's a big program too. We have 4 in our own voice speakers and 3 more being trained now. Next. Schools, that's a big area. Parents and teachers as allies in a new program called ETS, Ending the Silence. We started last year going into the schools and giving presentations. We're at North County High School, Severna Park High School, Annapolis High School, Severn School. We've been to various schools where we'll speak to the teachers or the school personnel or to the parents or to the students. And some of them have a psychology club or things like that. We give a 45-minute presentation about what's the warning signs in schools, because there's a lot of suicide going on within schools with mental illness. So this is a big one, but with COVID, it had to end in the spring because nobody was in the schools. We're now attempting, and they're trying to get us back into schools when the schools start again. It's hard to, can't do it really on Zoom with a class, a big class in school. So we're trying to get that one going again, but this is very important in the schools. Homefront, next one, that's a class for the military, friends of military members. They suffer a lot of PTSD and a lot of other areas. So we get to the veterans. We talk to the people at Fort Meade, at the Naval Academy. NAMI Basics, class for parents and family caregivers of children or children and adolescents. The family to family I talked about was for parents and caregivers for children over 18. This is the same course, but for under 18. And that's another fast growing area. 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. So we have this NAMI Basics, and this one they can take on demand. It's online. You don't have to go to a class. So people can just go to that one anytime. That's another important. We're moving down in age. Everything used to be for 18 and over. Now it's down into children and adolescents. Next. And then there's NAMI Smarts. It's an advocacy program. I mentioned Ending the Silence, a school presentation for middle and high school. Next. Partnerships. Who we work with? A lot of people say, well, do you by yourself? No, we work with a lot of people. Arundel Medical Center and the new McNew Center. I don't know if you know that, but that's the new psychiatric center on Riva Road. Was just built a year ago. I sat on the board trying to, and we decided how we're going to build that and make it user-friendly for the rooms for the patients that would come in. We worked very closely with the Arundel Medical Center. Also, Baltimore, Washington Medical Center. We work very closely with them. And both of these, I'll go in and speak to the patients when COVID was there, but now when it ends, I'll be going back in. I'll go in and speak to the patients and let them know when they were released that they could come to our support groups, our connections, and their parents could go to our family classes. We work with the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency very closely, their crisis response team and their CIT team, crisis intervention team. I actually go out and give training to the CIT officers about NAMI. So when they have a problem in a home they have to go to, they can give them our brochures. They can tell the parents, hey, you ought to try the NAMI support groups or take the family to family class, or to the consumer, try the connections. We have many of them. If they're go in the hospital, then they come out and they'll go into one of our classes. There's 5 behavioral agencies in the county. These were programs where people can go during the day for classes, see their psychiatrist, therapist, Arundel Lodge in Edgewater, Omni House in Glen Burnie, Vesta in Odenton, psychotherapeutic services in Annapolis, and PEP, People Encouraging People, over by the airport. We work closely with all 5 of those. In fact, I'm on the board of Arundel Lodge, but we work closely with all of them, support them, they support us. We'll go in and try to help them in any needs. They'll refer parents to come to our groups, things like that. So these 5 behavioral agencies are very important. We work with them. As I said, we work with the school system, Anne Arundel County Psychologists Association. We work with them. Been many Anne Arundel County churches. There's a group called YSA, Youth Suicide Awareness. We participate on their board and help them. Community college is another big one. We're working closely with them. They're trying to start a NAMI group out there called NAMI on Campus. Some of their people out there may come and join us and be work on an internship program or help us in any kind of needs too. There's other groups too. We go and talk to the on Jennifer Road, the facility for people going in that have been incarcerated, things like that. This is just a stigma-free pledge. We talk to people about taking a pledge to be stigma-free, not against mental illness, to use the proper words and things, not using some of the words that are out there talking about people. Next slide. For instance, here, like people perceived as dangerous and they're alienated and irresponsible and things like that. We talk to them about this, mental health conditions, not to have a stigma against it. Next. And this is the pledge that we've asked people to sign different times. You can skip this one, go on. It's about labels. Go ahead. This talks about the crisis intervention team. Actually, Steve Thomas, the head of the team, I have him on our board of directors. And then I think you may all know about the CIT, but we provide to them, we give a presentation to them, we partner with them, and Steve sits on our board. That's a very important group with our police. We work with both police departments, Annapolis and the county police. They call us, we go visit them, we talk to them all the time. Next. Just a couple of key important developments. I sat on the need for the approval of the new beds at the hospital. We'll sit on a new committee for increased mental health. Pathways is a co-occurring facility. I don't know if you know that, but it's a co-occurring. People have a mental illness with a drug or alcohol. And then there's another outpatient program on Riva Road. Next. Arundel Lodge, there's a couple of things here. They opened a center for children, okay? They merged with another recovery program. They're doing a strategic program. Now that goes out to 2021. I did change it for expansion. And they're doing a big job for the military families. Next. This was a project done a while back by Community Health about findings that mental health services increased greatly. Children are the biggest demand. Our psychiatric beds in the county are very low. I don't know if you know, but as a few years ago, we only had 12 beds up at Baltimore Washington Medical Center. Anne Arundel Medical Center had 0. But now we're up to, they had 10 more beds at Baltimore Washington. They have 24. And Anne Arundel Medical Center built a new McNew Center on Riva Road for 16 beds. So now we're up to 40. There is a little thumb rule that you should have 13 beds for every 100,000 population. If you say we have 500,000 population in our county, that would be 5 times 13. We should have 65 acute psychiatric beds where somebody needs to be in the hospital. And we only have 40. So we're increasing, but we are way behind, but we're moving up. The sad part is when somebody needs to be admitted to the hospital by a doctor and they can't go in Anne Arundel County because our beds are full all the time at those 2 hospitals, they may have to go down to Calvert County. They may have to go to Shepherd Pratt up in Baltimore or over in Washington, over near Columbia or Washington, D.C. So there's a great need for more psychiatric beds in hospitals. The one in Annapolis at McNew Center also has a shell bed. The second floor or third floor is empty, and if it's needed, they're going to add more beds there in the future sometime. Next. So Oasis is another good group we work with, and their staff is psychologists. And in the past, the governor has established this task force. there's an increased need for police training, crisis response. The mental health agency is really responding greatly to that. And more work with government legislatures to increase the funding is one of the big areas. Next. These are some websites. There's ours, NAMIAAC.org. NAMI.org is the national one. And then these are some other really key ones that you could go to learn more information. Next. We participate in a lot of events. Bo's Effort Foundation, Golfer, their son died from mental illness. Their parents were taking our course. They just loved it so much. It helped them get through their son's passing with his mental illness. So they established a golf tournament. They give us funds. We participate in Homeless Resource Day at various places in the county. Toiletry Spa Day, where we contribute toiletries for the people that live in group housing. Our NAMI Walk, we participate Out of Darkness Suicide Walk. Anne Arundel Community College Health Fairs. We go to Northrop Grumman Health Fairs, Baltimore, Washington Health Fairs. We do the mental health first aid classes and other events too that come up in the county. These are a few of the key ones. Next. What are our needs? We ask you to join our group. It's just $40 to join or $60 as a family. Volunteer, become a board member, give us your ideas, help us stamp out stigma. Thank you for letting us speak to your organization, and any donations, or if you know any financial assistance we can get in any way, it would be appreciated. The one there, it says more programs. We really need more people, more volunteers. We have a great group that does it, but we need more because we're getting more programs. I mean, people are coming to us. We can't get to all the people for enough programs because we don't have enough volunteers. And we're always looking for more help. That somebody just lead one class a year, take the training and lead one class a year, because so many people are needing help. We can't keep up with it, especially with COVID right now. So that's it. That's our program. I want to thank you. Can I put up a couple pictures here? Like this is one of our programs. We have pamphlets on all of the various illnesses, OCD, bipolar, schizophrenia, and then we have brochures and all the classes. Here's the basics course. Here's the family to family, and we give these. I'm going to send those down to your office for each one of you to have a set of them for yourself. I wasn't able to get to do that yet. So that's basically who we are, what we do. We're sort of overwhelmed with so much mental illness going on. Many of us, like myself, have taken this on. I'm in my 60s. We want to do this. This is our thing for the rest of our life. We've been led to do this to help others. And a lot of people don't know about us. And I talked to Nathan and your group, and I thought this would be an opportunity. I didn't know how much your group knew about us. Can I take any questions?
Mr. Delp, thank you very much for coming to give your presentation to the County Council today. And I think we have just a couple of minutes if any council member wishes to comment or has a question for Mr. Delp. Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually just wanted to know if, I know I'll be putting your information in my newsletter. I'm just wondering is there a local website or Facebook page, or do you guys just spin off of the national website page in Arlington?
No, we have our own website, NAMIAAC.org.
Okay.
NAMIAAC.org.
Is that in the presentation? Okay.
Yeah, at the last page it had that.
Okay, great. I'll link to that. I appreciate it.
And we have a warm line also that people can call 24 hours and talk to our people about, I have a problem or issue, and we guide them to a different direction. It's in our brochure. It's on our website also.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for informing us today. This is going to be, I'm looking forward to linking constituents to your group.
That would be wonderful.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. Mr. Delp, I just want to thank you so much for coming out and doing your presentation today. I think for those who are watching or will watch the recording of this, it will be extremely helpful to know that you're out there, and I too will share your information. I just have one question, and that's related to what you've seen trend-wise in the past year. I know you mentioned in your presentation an increase in children. Can you give an idea from the families that reach out? Kind of what I found was shocking was how young some of these children are who are struggling with mental illness. It's pretty young, as young as elementary school. Is that pretty accurate?
That's correct. Probably the most problems we're seeing in junior high and high school, 14, 15-year-old with cutting, with depression, severe depression, peer relationships, sometimes bullying, but bullying doesn't come up too much. Just that they're developing the signs and stigma, signs of very depressed, very lonely, those kind of things. Loneliness seems to be one of the biggest issues right now because of COVID. They're not out with their friends, can't do a lot, not in school. And loneliness is just a big issue. And parents are having a hard time with it. Why all of a sudden this loneliness? What do we do with them? We're trying to juggle our job and work. And then it just gets full blown. From their loneliness, they might try marijuana or drugs or something, you know, and then it just elevates up further.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Delp. I'm going to ask if, well, if you can be very brief, I'll call on you two colleagues, but because we've got the 3 bills with the police that we need to get to before they have to leave. So Ms. Radbian and then Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lisa Radbian, District 6. I just echo my colleagues' thanks of the work that you're doing. And I'm curious if you've seen any trends in particular in communities of color. Because I know that in some parts of communities of color, there is a lot of stigma surrounding mental illness. And I'm just curious if you've seen changes in the stigma, changes in interest in your organization, and anything you can share about that.
Yes, I could go into a lot more detail about that area. We've been to many African-American churches, and they say that it's hard for their families. They're not allowed to tell them that they have a problem. They keep it within themselves. And same thing for the Hispanic community. Difficult time. We've been searching for 2 years because we can do any of these courses in Hispanic, in Spanish also. And we have brochures for that. It's very difficult for them too. They close knit. They don't want to admit things. They say, we've talked to them, it's in their family culture. Or they don't want to tell anybody about it. So they keep it themselves. We're having a hard time. We have a Hispanic speaking gentleman on our board, and we're reaching out as much as we can. There's a new group in Annapolis we're talking to that works with some new immigrants that are coming into the area. But it's been very difficult for that. We're trying hard, but it's just so they just don't want to come. They don't want to participate. Hope that helps you.
Thank you for the effort. I know the stigma is is an obstacle, so I appreciate you trying to break through it.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Mr. Delp, just wanted to say thank you for your presentation, coming to join us today, having personally attended a NAMI meeting before and having family members who've been associated. I just appreciate the work that you're doing and just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. We'll be having a gala. We have a gala every year. It's our biggest fundraiser in October, first Saturday. And in the past, I don't think any of you were able to attend, or maybe you weren't on the council then, but we'll be sending you an invitation to it. We think COVID will be over then, but it's a large gathering. We had 200 people the other year at the hotel down in Annapolis, and it's just a festive evening, and we have speakers, and we give out awards in the county to the county police or to the mental health agency or key people that do so much work for mental health that are behind the scenes. We try to give them awards to make them known better. Thank you so much for everything. If you ever have any questions, call me, go to our website, go to our warm line. Again, thank you. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Delp. It's been great to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and Council, I also have Mr. Delp's contact information. I can help get some of the information that has been requested here this morning. And as a second note, I just wanted to say that Ms. Fiedler and Ms. Pickard are now with group here. You guys missed roll call earlier, so just wanted to say everybody's here.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Okay, so we are going to move on to our legislation. First, we have bill number 1621, which is an administration bill. Mr. Barron, are you with us this morning? There you are. You have the floor.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the council. Appreciate us taking these first couple of bills out of order, as our friends in the police department do have a prior commitment and need to be out of here by 10. So I'm going to be as quick as I can. If there needs to be any follow-up afterwards, happy to answer any questions over email or later. Bill 1621 increases one police major position. It's an exempt E6 position, and one police chief of staff. That's an E5 positions. Creates the exempt title and adds the position in the exempt service. The administration will be bringing a amendment to clarify that we are decreasing one administrative secretary. With that, I believe we've shared the amendment already with Madam Administrator. If not, it will be coming later today. With that, Chief, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, good morning, and thank you for your consideration. I apologize that we do have to leave by 10. We have 3 recently promoted sergeants, and we're celebrating that promotion this morning along with their families, a very small ceremony. So we're excited about that. They are too. So I'll just highlight a couple of points to each position. And again, I appreciate your consideration. All 3 of these positions are part of what I consider our priorities for this year. I call them our 3 C's. The first being community policing and engagement. The second being our crisis response team. Ironically, you heard from Mr. Delp, and I can highlight that for a moment. I'm glad he did present an overview because it helps articulate my why, but also communications. And you heard Mr. Delp speak specifically to our crisis response team. So I'll skip to the majors position. I intend to create a new bureau. I need a major to oversee that bureau. It's going to be our Bureau of Community Services. It's time that we focus on community policing, community outreach, community engagement, and basic community services. All of our juvenile or youth programs are encompassed within this bureau, in addition to the crisis response team. And I have asked for additional officers to upstaff this position or these positions within the crisis response team, simply because, as Mr. Delp referred, we are seeing an increase in calls for service, particularly with folks who are in distress, requiring assistance. He spoke to the loneliness and depression. We're seeing that too. We're seeing the increase in the suicides. So I've spoken personally with Jen Corbin and Lieutenant Steve Thomas as to the urgency and need to upstaff our crisis response team, to complement patrol, to help patrol, but obviously to provide the service that's very much needed, not just in the midst of this pandemic, but we're also anticipating more issues post-pandemic. So we need to be in a position of readiness to appropriately respond to the community's cry for help. So hence the new division. I'll also be asking within the next 2 years for additional resources to upstaff our community policing. It's something we do very well, but we can improve upon it. Again, the demands are up, and we see the need and have identified the need at each of our districts to enhance our community policing officers, but just also expand this entire Bureau of Community Services. That person will be responsible also for seeking training opportunities to help the entire department improve with regard to, in a sense, every officer being a community policing officer. The executive assistant to the chief of police position, I find myself tasked with managing my own schedule. It's a bit challenging with all of the other demands of the position. I could really use the help in the chief's office to oversee the daily administration and function of the chief's office. I could use the assistance also with managing the legislative affairs, And this would be a person who possesses at least an undergraduate degree to help me out with presentations and data analysis. And then the larger component for us, and one of the 3 C's, is communications. Again, we do very good work within our department, but we could do a better job of communicating that so the community is aware of what it is we do. Again, you heard Mr. Delp say we have a crisis response team, but a lot of people really don't know that, don't know, what it is that we offer. Unless you're a consumer currently, we could do a better job of letting the community know, here's a service that's available to you and we're willing to come out and help. To the 3rd position, the chief of staff, I need someone obviously who is a trusted advisor to help me navigate through my day-to-day activities. I find myself at times being asked to meet with various groups, and there are enough conflicts at times. And I've, been asking the deputy chiefs for assistance, but they're also trying to manage their bureaus. This person would serve as someone who would help me communicate my vision, our vision, the 3 C's to the community, and just dialogue, build relationships, the very necessary elements that my office and this department requires. I also tasked this individual for helping me stand up this Bureau of Community Services. It's something that I'm looking forward to doing. I think it'll be an added benefit, not just to the department, renewing our focus on our commitment to the community, but also the obvious and added benefit to our residents and visitors of Anne Arundel County. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief Atwood. Are there any questions from my colleagues on Bill 1621? Okay, seeing none at the moment, let's go ahead and roll into Bill number 1921, which is sponsored by Mr. Volkey and Ms. Fiedler. So, Mr. Volkey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Appreciate the opportunity to present this bill. I want to thank Major Passman with the Police Department, who has been very helpful working to put this together, as well as Ms. Kenny in the Office of Law, who have both been integral in bringing this bill. So basically, this bill comes out of a question that I posed to our Legislative Council probably about 1.5 years ago about whether we could regulate litter and basically prohibit litter a little bit more in the county to try to fix what I keep hearing about, which is a lot of trash on the sides of the roads. When I asked that question, I discovered that we did not have authority under the state law to be able to do that. There are a few counties that do, but we did not have it. So I went to our legislators at the state level and I asked them to pass that bill. They did. They passed enabling legislation at the state level, which now allows us at the county level to be able to regulate litter beyond just the levels that we've done before. So the legislative summary does a nice job kind of covering what this bill does. I'm not going to read the whole thing into the record. I think all of you can read it. But if you have any questions, that's the impetus, that's the history, that's how we got here. And I'm more than happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Mr. Barron, would the administration like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning again. I believe Major Passman is with us, as well as Ms. Kenny from Office of Law. Happy to provide any technical assistance. The administration has no objection to the bill.
And any of my colleagues have questions?
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, Ms. Pickard.
I just wanted to understand a couple things. How did the sponsor get to how did you decide on the level of fine? I know you have another bill coming up where the fine is different. So I'm just curious. I haven't seen a list of all the fines. And then I wanted to know if this was just about catching someone in the act while driving of throwing things in the road, or can a neighbor call or say there's litter on somebody's property and then the property owner gets fined? I'm just trying to understand how this will work in all practicality. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Thank you, Councilwoman Pickard, for the questions. The answer about the fines, I discussed with Major Passman and Ms. Kenny what would be appropriate for this type of act. And basically, we tried to come up with something that was similar to what they have under the state law. Ms. Shewitt, if I misstate that, please jump in and correct me. But I believe that was the discussion, how we landed on that number. With respect to the question about whether a neighbor can look across the yard and say, hey, there's litter in the backyard and we're going to fine you, I believe, and I don't want to get this wrong, so there are other experts on the call who can answer this probably, but I think that's probably going to fall under the health department if somebody's leaving garbage in their backyard. I'm not sure that this is intended to go after that, but if Major Passman or Ms. Kenny think otherwise, I'm sure they'll correct me.
If I could chime in on that, Kelly
Go ahead, Ms. Kenny.
Attorney. Yeah, that is correct. If there was litter on somebody's yard, that would be enforced either as a health code violation or a zoning code violation, not under this bill.
Thank you. Ms. Radbian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lisa Radbian, District 6. This might be a question for the sponsor, but could be anyone else that happens to have the information. I've also had calls increasing, actually just in the last week, about litter increasing on the roadsides, but particularly the 97 and Route 50, which are, under the supervision of MDOT, State Highway Administration. So I was just wondering if you, in your process of, preparing this bill, had learned anything about, has their upkeep of the roadsides changed because of COVID, or are you aware of anything? Because I will admit, I was, specifically looking out for it when I drove to work yesterday, and it was noticeable in a way that I hadn't really paid attention to. So I'm just curious if you have anything that you can share about that, or anything you've learned.
Go ahead, Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Thank you, Councilwoman Radbian. I do not have any specialized knowledge about whether MDOT has changed their process or not, but I too am getting those calls just like you are. And the concern that I had is, part of what brought this bill about is there are a lot of state roads. Obviously, we send everything to SHA and we try to work with our contacts there. But on the county roads, I wanted to make sure that it was clear. People can't litter on county roads either. And we didn't have an ordinance at the county level that said you couldn't do that. So that's part of what's brought this on.
Does anyone else have a question? Okay, seeing none, why don't we go ahead and roll into bill number 2621, which is sponsored by Mr. Volkey.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. This bill comes out of a series of complaints that I received from one particular constituent, which then led Ms. Kenny, Mr. Passman, myself, Ms. Shewitt, Ms. Gannon from my office to all get very involved in trying to figure out what we could do about noise. In this particular situation, the constituent lives in a condominium, and there was a repeated, she over a series of months has had a repeated series of problems where her neighbor has been playing music at all hours of the night at very loud levels. One of the issues was the code is a little bit antiquated when it comes to noise violations. So I had the opportunity again to work with the police, with Major Passman and with Ms. Kenny from Office of Law. And we have tried to update this section of the code to make it a little clearer, that you don't just have to have music coming from a tape player, a disc player, a boombox, or a phonograph, that basically any type of sound that comes out of a radio or other music producing device, including a television or an amplified musical instrument or any audio producing device that's unreasonably loud, can be a violation. The code section here was sort of old school, and we're trying to bring it into the modern era where you have audio producing devices being all manner of things. We also have taken the time from 11 p.m. down to 10 p.m. And then we have done some things about the rebuttable presumption to try to make it a little clearer for the officers when they're there to know what is or is not a violation. So the concern that I had is in certain situations, and Major Passman, correct me if I get this wrong, but I think if the officer is standing about 50 feet away and they can hear the music, that is demonstrably or rebuttably presumed to be a violation. The concern I have is when you go into a condominium, maybe there is, a series of walls in between. So when the officer is 50 feet away, they're really outside the building, which is so far that at that point it becomes questionable whether, you know, the 50-foot limit applies or not. So we tried to do some things in here that suggest that the officer can use judgment, but that there still is that rebuttable presumption that if you're 50 feet away, that's unreasonably loud. So if I've mischaracterized any of that, Major Passman, please let me know, or Ms. Kenny, but that's what I believe we're doing here in this bill.
Mr. Barron, does the administration wish to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pete Barron with the administration. Joining me is the same team, Major Passman and Ms. Kenny from Office of Law. The administration has no objection to this bill.
Mr. Barron, you were so fast I wasn't done writing my notes. Okay, does any other colleague have a question or comment on this bill? Ms. Pickard.
Sorry, so I'm trying to understand the bill. Like, since in my own neighborhood, our houses are very close together. So I'm just trying to understand. I went through the bill carefully. So under current law, is the distance of 50 feet only applied to the amplified musical instrument? And is it just between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. or when Georgia plays her guitar in the backyard and the neighbors can hear because they're less than 50 feet, is that going to be finable? A violation?
Madam Chair. Oh, thank you. Yep, Nathan Volkey, District 3. Major Passman, if you could, because I don't want to butcher what current law is, if you could maybe clarify the current state of the law and then how this impacts.
Yeah, this nothing changes with the current way we do things, except that we did kind of I'm sorry, Major Passman, Ross Passman with the police department. As Mr. Volkey said, we kind of wanted to update the language. We did want to add television to this, but if you are just using a guitar, that's not amplified. So currently that's only restricted by those hours. Everything that's in the first part of the law is still there, and that's a 24-hour thing, the amplified music type thing.
I have a quick question, Mr. Volkey. I think this is for you. The bill makes a policy decision to lower the hours from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. And I'm curious, what is the reasoning behind that, given some other debates about 11 p.m. versus 10 p.m. that this council has had? I'm just trying to understand.
Sure. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Thank you, Madam Chair. It was just a product of discussions with the police department and with Ms. Kenny, and we just settled on that number, and I thought 10 p.m. was appropriate. If my colleagues would rather see it go back to 11 and we can get the rest of the bill, I can live with that. So just let me know. But yeah, that was a policy decision that I thought might be appropriate because I think typically 10 p.m., once you get past 10, for people to be running around with music producing devices that are amplified, gets pretty loud.
Thank you. Mr. Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the sponsor for explaining the bill. I do have a question, and this is constituents in my area. So when COVID hit, we actually had bars that had outdoor music. So I want to know if there was any discussion about that as far as businesses. Number two, I have a go-kart track, and also, well, now it's closed, the Capitol Raceway, what we've gotten complaints on. So again, I don't know what discussions have occurred. I know this might be a residential neighborhood, but I do have a lot of commercial neighborhoods. And again, with COVID, they got to make money. They were outside having bands, social distance, things like that. So I just want to make sure that this bill, while it have good intentions, obviously hurt someone else. So if somebody could address that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Volkey, do you want to take that?
Sure, I can certainly start. So if you look at section C2 of the bill, Mr. Pruski, again, Nathan Volkey, District 3, it does make it clear that the 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. prohibition is only if it can be heard in a residential district. So to the extent that Capitol Raceway or the go-kart track or anything like that are operating outside, One, if they're after 10 p.m., but they can't be heard in a residential district because, 50 feet away, they're not being able to be heard, I don't think it applies. Major Passman, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Ms. Kenny.
Yeah, so under the machine tool, similar device, those are the hours. That's the 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Everything else is strictly music, and this is residential. So I'm not sure how many bars are actually in a residential area, but it's strictly residential regarding this. And currently, bars that are operating outside, we don't, are continuing to do that.
Thank you.
I have one more quick question, Mr. Volkey. Did you look at whether there should be a replacement of unreasonably loud, or with a different objective criteria based on, say, decibels at a certain distance? So perhaps then it could be clear that you're looking at a radius. Maybe you're not, but if it's 60 decibels or 65, because those noise contours, for example, from the airport are, they're already these objective measures that we have and make policy off of. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Great question. We did not talk about decibels necessarily, but we did talk about how an officer would measure this. Major Passman, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this was the discussion where we had Corporal Bellis there, and he's specially trained on the equipment to do some of the noise assessment, basically. And part of the problem is I don't know that every officer in the police department has that equipment or has that training to use that. And so part of the reason that the 50-foot criteria has been in there, I think, for a long time, is because it allows an officer to kind of stand out there and just listen and use their judgment at that moment. When you have to get into a more detailed sort of noise analysis, that's where I think you need somebody who's a specialist. If I got that wrong, Major Passman, please correct me, but I thought that's what I recalled from our discussion.
Yeah, Major Passman, that's correct. We only have a few officers that have that type of equipment that are specially trained to enforce environmental law through the state. We use those for very large scale type of issues. But this has always been there for a road officer to know what's reasonable and not reasonable. And I do want to point out that that we get 99.99% compliance with folks with turning down music. I mean, our normal course of duty is to educate people, and they always turn the music down. So I don't see a strong enforcement part of this. It just helps clean it up just in case.
Thank you. Ms. Pickard, did you have a question?
I did. I wanted to clarify. I don't know every inch of our code, but all of us, almost all, I think all of us have commercial corridors that abut residential. So in our code, or does this bill, so if there's noise, music, outside bar music coming from a commercial entity wafting into the residential area behind, is that after 11 p.m., is that a potential violation? Is that stuff all supposed to be shut down by 11 currently?
Major Passman, yes. I mean, there are some types of things, but yes, we do get complaints of commercial areas, street cleaning equipment that will come in after hours. And, we've been able to mitigate that by having those folks do it during hours that are not beyond 11 p.m. or before or after 7 a.m.
Okay, we're right at 10 o'clock, so I think we should let Major Passman leave, and we can follow up with him if we have any other questions. Thank you very much. With that, we will move on to bill number 2121, which is Ms. Hare's bill. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. So this bill is it's allowing a sort of a new use, I suppose, a landscaping tree contracting, which is already allowed. The landscaping tree contracting piece is already allowed, but this would allow the accessory use of recycling those tree logs into firewood as a special exception in the RA uses, in RA districts. This came to me from a constituent. Essentially, the way the process works now, to my understanding, you already can have this landscaping and tree contracting business in that zone. And if they go and they cut a tree from someone's property, it's dead, it has to come down. They're already allowed to cut the tree into logs on the person's property. For some reason, they are not allowed to bring it back to their own property and cut it up there. So if the person who's having the tree cut down doesn't want the firewood, really the only opportunity or the only option left for the contracting company is to send the tree all the way up to the northern part of the county, where they could pay someone else to recycle it into firewood, or it goes to the landfill. Both of these sort of, I mean, it really seems quite silly to send logs to the landfill when you could recycle them into firewood for people to use. It's a necessary item, and it seems a little silly that you can do it on someone's residential property, but you can't do it on your own property. So we talked to planning and zoning. I really want to thank Lynn Miller, who was super helpful with this. Actually, all of planning and zoning was, but she and I spent a lot of time going back and forth to try and figure out what would make it appropriate to be able to do this on your own RA property, because we do want to make sure we're not, imposing on the neighbors. The machinery to actually cut the tree into logs can be noisy. And so this is what we came up with. We've got, there's a minimum acreage requirement. They need the site development plan. It's a special exception, so it provides the opportunity for lots of community input. They have a minimum distance requirement for the processing areas, any loading areas related to the recycling of logs, to be at least 200 feet from lot lines. And that is for sound, but also sight. So we're not, it's not going to be visible or able to be heard. And in fact, we were just talking about decibels with the last bill. This one does actually have a decibel requirement. So the sound level at the lot line of a residentially zoned or developed property may not exceed an average of 55 decibels and a peak of 60 decibels based on any readings that would be taken during the operations. For reference, 55 decibels is going to be somewhere between the sound of a fairly quiet dishwasher and a coffee machine kind of percolating, your Keurig or something like that. So we definitely want to make sure that this is not something that's bothering neighbors. We've got in here limitations on, how the firewood can be stored. We've got in limitations on the hours. And they all have to meet the other requirements of access and nuisance and all that other stuff. So we're hoping that this sort of minor tweak will allow some of these companies to not have to send their logs to the landfill or pay someone up in the northern part of the county and waste all that time trucking them all the way up there and back and things like that. Ms. Schuett can correct me if I misstated anything on the legal piece, and definitely if Ms. Miller is here, she can correct me on anything from the planning and zoning side of things.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barron, would the administration like to respond?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Pete Barron with the administration. Ms. Miller, our landscaping and nursery expert, is here, and Ms. Kelly from the Office of Law. As the sponsor stated, a lot of work went into this. I appreciate the collaborative process, OPZ and committee or council's attorney and the sponsor went through to get this bill in good shape. The administration has no issue with the bill. I think it balances the neighbors' concerns and hopefully will help reduce some stuff going to the landfill. So with that, Ms. Miller, if you have anything to add, please feel free.
Hi, Lynn Miller, Planning and Zoning. I think at this time, I don't have anything to add. I think Councilwoman Hare covered it well, and we do appreciate her incorporating some of our suggestions for special exception requirements. So as Mr. Barron stated, we're comfortable with the bill as written. Thanks.
Okay, well, I have a question for the sponsor, because as we've, none of us know the code, like every square inch of the code, right? But it was occurring to me that this use that you're adding is very specific by having the recycling of logs be into firewood. Is there, a reason why it's firewood versus any other type of wood product that could be made from, a log or tree? Do we already cover that type of like manufacturing something from wood is somewhere else in the code, so it doesn't make sense? Or is it more like a market-based supply and demand kind of issue?
So in this particular instance, the constituent was specifically their intention is to do firewood and to then be able to sell the firewood. So we didn't have a broader conversation about other wood materials, but I would certainly be happy to consider that if you think it's something that would be helpful to other constituents. It was not something that came up in that context.
Well, that's really interesting, because it just, as I'm looking at it, I mean, if you're going to recycle logs into something, you are going to have to cut them up. You are going to have to make a lot of noise, right? And so I wonder is it almost like same diff, right? Like if you're just recycling of logs, then maybe you don't need it to be into firewood. And that might actually be good for business uses, like where, somebody's making like, making and selling a table or something out of these logs, which is why I was thinking then of carpentry. But maybe Ms. Miller has some ideas to add to that discussion.
Hi, Lynn Miller. Ms. Lacey, I'm not sure about that. As Councilwoman Hare mentioned, we didn't really have a big discussion about that when we were working on this bill. I mean, in my mind, most often when a landscape contractor is bringing wood back to their site from a job off-site, cutting it up to sell for firewood seems to be, in my mind, what would most frequently be what they would be using the wood for. But your question is a good one. Possibly they would want to sell the wood for other uses.
Councilwoman Lacey, I'm sorry, did you say?
Yes, please, go ahead.
This is Jessica here, District 7. Did you say furniture? Because that's a fascinating, I hadn't even thought about that, but recycling the logs into furniture. Okay, yep. If you're willing, let's explore potentially an amendment. I think this is fascinating, but I would like to talk.
Yeah, it's kind of like the idea of reclaimed wood, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Cool.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ms. Schuett.
Chair, Madam Chair, thank you. I just wanted to point out that there is another use in the code that is a larger use for the recycling of natural wood waste. That use allows the wood to come from different counties. There's more trucks involved and all of that. And so this was limited so that you can't take trees from other counties or even other people. You have to use your own tree. It was intended to make this a small expansion and primarily, as the councilwoman already said, to keep these trees going to the landfill, which makes no sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other of my colleagues have questions or comments on this bill?
I'm just going to add the provision that Ms. Schuett was just referencing, that natural wood waste recycling with those heavier uses and being able to take trees from other places occurs. I think it's in industrial zones in the county. So that's where that is now.
Great. I'm not seeing anybody else having any other questions at this time. Okay, thank you. So we will roll into bill number 1721, which is an administration bill. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask Deputy Chief Dinkle, Ms. Atkinson, Ms. Collins, if her audio is working, Mr. Taru, and Ms. Blair Klausmeyer to join us. Bill 1721 is for positions in the fire department. we add fire communications operator and two new fire communications operators. We decrease a couple of positions. There will be an amendment that, just like the Bill 1621, I believe has the drafts have been sent to council, the council administrator. I don't believe they've been shared with the council yet, but they will be as soon as they are through that vetting process, just to make a, I don't think it's a technical amendment, but a technical correction on the total number of positions. With that, if Deputy Chief Dinkle has anything to add, please feel free, sir. And with that, we're asking you to move the bill with an amendment when it's before you at a council meeting.
Great. Good morning. Chief Wolford sends her regrets, and she also sends me. For the record, I'm Deputy Chief Ross Dinkle. The positions that this bill addresses fall under my command. Madam Chair, members of the council, thank you for providing me this opportunity to discuss bill number 17-21. The purpose of this bill is to reclassify the existing classification of fire communications operator to a new classifications of fire communications operator 1, and to create two new classifications, fire communications operator 2 and fire communications operator 3. Fire communication operators, or FCOs, staff fire alarm, which is the fire department's 911 center. FCOs handle the call taking, dispatching of resources, monitoring tactical and routine radio traffic for all fire department activity, and address operational needs and requests as they're received. FCOs are supervised by uniformed members of the department at the rank of lieutenant. The fire department has authorized 28 FCO positions. Currently, there's no career path for FCOs. The creation of the new job classifications will provide that path and contribute to the employee satisfaction and retention. The current FCO position, while rewarding and at times exciting, is basically a dead-end job. There's no opportunity to develop additional skill sets for career advancement. This lack of a career advancement path results in FCOs leaving for other jurisdictions that provide an advancement path, and results in turnover of some of our employees just as they're beginning to become proficient and have gained experience in the position. Employee turnover costs the taxpayer in terms of vacancy overtime, hiring, training, and probably real important, the loss of experience, which is directly related to the quality of service that they provide. If passed, bill number 1721 will shift the FCO classification to FCO1, which will become the entry-level classification, and create a career path by the establishment of the FCO2 and FCO3 classifications. The FCO2 position will become a skills-based proficiency advancement available to all FCO1s upon completion of required training and experience. The FCO3 classification will become a competitive promotion to a supervisory position. The goal is to create 6 new FCO3 positions. The FCO3 position will have 3 distinct roles. However, each FCO3 will be capable of performing all 3 roles. First role would be as a fire communications shift supervisor. We intend to eventually create 4 positions. We will have 1 position as a fire communications training officer and 1 position as the fire communications quality assurance officer, for a total of 6 FCO3 positions available. In addition to providing a career path to the supervisory position, the creation of the FCO3 classification will enable the fire department to reassign some of the uniformed personnel currently assigned in a supervisory position in fire alarm to assignments related to delivery of fire and EMS service. Thanks for listening. Can I answer any questions?
Thank you, Deputy Chief Dinkle. Are any of my colleagues having thoughts of questions, raising your flags, speaking my name? Okay, Ms. Fiedler, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is, are the 29 FCO positions that will now be FCO 1s, they are obviously all meet the requirements?
Yes, Deputy Chief Dinkle, yes, that's correct. We have 28. That's the technical change that's going to come back. Yes, all 28 currently are FCOs or FCO 1s. There's no change to that. It's just a retitling of that current job classification.
Okay, and just one more question, Amanda Fiedler, District 5. would there be a possibility to bring in FCOs who meet the requirements of the higher levels, bring them in for other jurisdictions, or is the goal to only create job growth opportunity for current Anne Arundel County FCOs?
That's correct, Deputy Chief Tinkle. They have to be, they come in at the entry level position, hopefully pre-trained from another jurisdiction. It'd be great if we grab some of those folks to save some time on training. But yes, the intention is for those FCO 2 and 3s to come up through the Anne Arundel County system. Can't reach out and just pull them into those ranks.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Deputy Chief. Please extend our thanks also to Chief Wolford. She did a good job sending you.
I certainly will. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, let's do bill number 1821, which is also an administration bill. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sticking around for 1821 is Mr. Taru from Budget, Ms. Atkinson from Personnel, Ms. Collins, and Ms. Blair Klausmeyer from Law. So you all will probably recall during the FY21 budget process, there was some issues and some discussion relating to the process around reclassification of occupied positions through the budget. This legislation will codify that practice as permissible. This change does not reclassify an employee, however, reclassifies the position that this change. Employees who are currently in a position that is reclassified through the budget will serve as an underfill role. Reclassifications of filled positions will be noted in the budget. Reclassifications of employees still must follow the process established in the Human Relations Manual as a function of the Office of Personnel. This proposed change allows for additional transparency and increased efficiency in the relationship to the administration's vision for the budget year. To remind everybody of the history of the development of this bill, Madam Auditor, Office of Law, and the administration work closely together to come to this proposal. We think it is a great bill and hope you will move it at the appropriate time. Happy to answer any questions.
Colleagues, does anyone have a question or comment? Ms. Pickard.
Allison Pickard, D2. I just wanted to, somehow I got roped into a meeting post-budget, maybe because I was chair at the time, with the administration and Madam Auditor. I just wanted to we don't have the blue letter yet, I don't believe, regarding this bill. We might have it already. I just wanted to make sure that Madam Auditor is comfortable with the solution that we've come up with. Seeing that she's not raising her hand, I'm hoping that that is true. We have found the magic words to deal with this issue.
Yeah, so I am definitely comfortable with the way they want to approach this, which is to indicate in the budget which positions that are filled that are going to be reclassified, and then keep that employee in the underfilled position until it goes through a personnel review. There is some, I gave them some suggested language and they reviewed it, we discussed it. I do have one thing where I think it's on line 17, where it says the current expense budget shall note it. I'm probably gonna reach out to Lori to see, we had talked about it, but I didn't see it go in there, that it say proposed and adopted, just to clarify that it's gonna come in the proposed bill as well. But other than that, I have talked to the Office of Budget. Part of the process will include the budget office providing me a list of those employees that are in that position. so that I can then tie it. So, you know, as long as we get that list, it shouldn't be a problem. If that helps.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I know that we have Mr. Volkey back now just on audio. So, sir, you have the ability to talk and to jump in if you want to ask a question or make a comment. I just want to make sure you know that I see you and you can jump in, or I'll give you the opportunity to say whether or not you'd like to make a comment. So this is the time. Any other comments or questions on bill number 1821? Okay, I think there are none. We can move on to bill number 2021, which is Ms. Radbian's bill. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lisa Radbian, District 6. So this bill is really intended to close a loophole that we unintentionally left open when we passed the Forest Conservation Act. Actually, not last year, in 2019 now, time's flying. So the Forest Conservation Act that we passed addresses development activities. Well, it turns out that if you engage in tree clearing before you have submitted an application to the county, you're subject only to a very small fine, even though you can actually be clearing a pretty large, substantial number of trees. So the idea here is to make sure that that kind of activity is captured under the law. I will actually be bringing some amendments forward to ensure that this does not impact your sort of average homeowner who needs to take down a tree, say a tree in their backyard that's where they want to put a swing set for their kids, or a tree that's threatening their house, or anything like that. So it's the amendments are, we intended to do that with the bill itself. A constituent group poked very, very hard at it and found a couple places where indeed homeowners could be impacted. And so we'll be bringing forth amendments that will attempt to, and I think very well, shield homeowners from any sort of impact from this bill. The bill is really intended to capture folks that are, you know, on a vacant piece of land. We don't have an existing home, and the intent, even though it's, you know, maybe not clarified by an application with the county, but the ultimate intent would be to develop. And we actually had a couple situations around the county where this has happened, and they were only subject to the $500 fine of grading without a permit, and that's certainly not what we intended passing the Forest Conservation Act. And I think I would hope we would all agree that our intent is the same too, to make sure that, you know, large tree clearings can't happen, you know, without some mitigation, replanting, paying a fee in lieu, or a fine. So I'm happy to answer questions, or I guess actually the administration, it's your turn as well.
Thank you, Ms. Radbian. Mr. Barron, would the administration like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the sponsor of this legislation. The administration supports this. Oh, sorry, before I get to my talking points, joining me is Mr. Johnston, our Environmental Policy Director, our IMP Director, Mr. Africa. I think Mr. Wasim is available for questions as well. From Department of Public Works, we have Mr. Michelson, and from Law, we have Ms. Kenny. Yes, the administration appreciates the sponsor working with us to craft this bill. As she noted, there will be a handful of amendments to clarify the intent of the bill. As was mentioned, I guess it is more than a year ago now, this council voted unanimously to reform the Forest Conservation Bill. That bill included a very important provision to prevent this kind of clearing. However, when we did that particular penalty, this kind of situations where that penalty only applied until after the developer submits an application to develop the land. So a clearing violation before a application is filed would not come under the forest conservation bill that this council passed. That loophole where a forest can be cleared and avoid the requirement to preserve the forest area within the development application, that violation is, like the councilwoman mentioned, basically a slap on our wrist. It actually creates a kind of a perverse incentive to circumvent the forest conservation law. And this has happened, including a pretty well-documented case in the councilwoman's district. So like was mentioned, this bill seeks to close that loophole. It makes it clear that clearing of trees in a forest would be subject to that fine of $4.50 per square foot up to $10,000. We appreciate the sponsor working with us to address some of the concerns around the bill, and you will see a handful of amendments. I don't believe they are finished drafting yet, but we should be seeing them well in advance of the bill's hearing. So I'm going to ask Mr. Johnston to correct anything that I may have misstated, and want to thank him, the team at INP and DPW and law for working with the sponsor to try to make sure we are achieving the intent of this council's forest conservation bill that we passed unanimously. With that, happy to answer any questions. Or Mr. John.
And Madam Chair, if you don't mind me chiming in, I just want to thank from the Office of Law, Kelly Kenny, who's been instrumental in drafting the bill and the amendments. Adam, I think Pete may have already mentioned, but I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, thank you. I just want to point out for everyone that it is 10:26. We need to take our break in 4 minutes, so we can do questions or we can just talk more about the bill, but I'd like to give everybody the opportunity to get in their questions now, and we'll see how long that discussion goes. Do any council members have questions or comments? Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. My first question is just, how did we decide 3 trees or 1,000 square feet? What was the premise for that decision?
Ms. Radbian?
So actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the amendments will be modifying that slightly. So actually, we looked at the size of very, very large trees and looked at the square footage that they, what's the biggest tree that we have around, and to make sure that we left room for that biggest tree if a homeowner indeed needed to take down that very large tree, that they wouldn't be subject to, to the penalties of this law. So we originally came out in the ballpark around the number you just mentioned, which is in the original bill, but we're going to be moving up to 2,500 square feet, which we did indeed find some trees with that size wingspan, or I guess canopy is the correct term.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? This includes you, Mr. Volkey. Ms. Pickard.
Allison Pickard, D2. I had numerous questions, but it sounds like there are numerous amendments that may answer my questions. So are we going to talk about those amendments, or are we just waiting for the bill? Are we talking about the amendments this morning, or are we going to wait on the amendments?
Ms. Radbian?
So I feel like since I only got I don't even know if they're finalized, but I only have the draft form amendments from last evening. I haven't had the opportunity to share them with my colleagues on the council, but I do intend to have them shared, in advance of our meeting on Monday. So I could give you sort of a brief overview of what they do, if that would be helpful, or
I'm good either way. I just, okay. Once I see them, then I'll know if they've answered my questions. I'm prepared to move on or discuss them, but if they're not ready yet, then maybe we should wait.
I think that might be helpful. Then you could see exactly what it is that's in the amendments. And I'll just give you the general idea that the purpose is really to make sure that your ordinary homeowner that needs to take down trees is not impacted. So like I said, we had constituents really poke and like, could they come up with any possible scenario where a homeowner might be impacted? And indeed they did. They found some. We thought we had, had this pretty tight. And they found a couple places where actually, no, this could impact a homeowner. And one of the amendments that I think gives me the most comfort is there will be 3 amendments total. Actually sets forth a handful of factors that can be used in determining the amount of fine. And so, those factors will have the intent of making sure that a homeowner who's, just trying to take care of their property, just trying to, do what someone who owns their own piece of land should be able to do. And, in terms of, just making adjustments and landscaping decisions and things like that is not impacted under the law. So I don't know. So the amendments will be forthcoming and I can answer any questions then.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments before we take a recess? Does not, or our break, I should say. We can't recess when we're not in a formal meeting. Okay, then we will go ahead and take our break for our captioner's sake. We'll come back at 10:45. Thanks, everyone. Ms. Corby? It
Yes, Madam
is
Chair.
10:45, and I think we have, if I can count, 5 council members. Are we expecting to have 5 right now, or are we waiting for one to come back?
So it looks like Mr. Volkey may have had to leave the meeting. I don't see him.
Okay.
He says he'll be back though. So anyway, we can proceed with whomever we have here. If you'd like me to do a roll call, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, Ms. Lacey.
Present.
Ms. Pickard.
Present.
Mr. Volkey. He's not quite back here with us yet. Mr. Prisky.
Still here.
Ms. Fiedler.
Present.
Ms. Radbian.
Present.
Ms. Hare.
Present.
Ms. Linda Schuett.
Present.
Ms. Susan Smith. Okay, Madam Chair, Madam Auditor's not quite with us yet, and I believe Mr. Volkey will be joining us by phone pretty soon here, but you have enough to move forward.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We are now moving to bill number 2221, which is an administration bill. Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to be back. Pete Barron with the administration. I'm going to have a big group joining us for this one. So I have Mr. Taru from Budget, Ms. McQuaid from Finance, Ms. White and Ms. Nisley from DSS, Ms. Henry and Mr. Beckier from DPW, Ms. Penley from Health, and Ms. Blair Klausmeyer from the Office of Law. Bill number 22-21 is a budget transfer bill. I'll go over the highlights, and then the experts on the Zoom are happy to answer any questions about specific items in the bill. The first section transfers $2.3 million from the CAO contingency fund, roughly about $2 million of that to DPW for snow removal costs, $330,000 to social services. The social services is a move from the grant fund that will eventually have offsetting revenue recognized. The second section of the bill is about $5.5 million. It recognizes 3 grants not currently in the budget in the health department. None of those grants require a county match. $41,000 for the Maryland Community Health Resources Commission, $4.3 million for FEMA emergency protective measures, and then $1.1 for COVID vaccination efforts. The second section 3 is a transfer of $1.2 million of unappropriated fund balance in the general fund, which will be appropriated as a contribution to the Revenue Reserve Fund. This contribution represents the maximum allowable contribution for now to the Revenue Reserve Fund. So the current law is 5% of estimated general fund revenues. There is a bill, and I'm blanking on the number, I think it's 2521 that we will see later in this morning, hopefully not afternoon's, work session to discuss where we will be supporting raising that cap to 6%. This transfer maxes the fund to the 5% of estimated revenue. With that, we're happy to answer any questions, and we will be asking you to move the bill at the appropriate time when it is heard.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions or comments? Seeing none, hearing none, I'm not even sure if Mr. Volkey's on the call back, but okay. Looks like you have a non-questioning bunch. Okay, we will then go on to bill number 2321, which is an administration bill co-sponsored by Ms. Pickard and Ms. Radbian. So Mr. Barron, you have the floor first.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. Pete Barron again. Joining me or sticking around with me is Mr. Taru from Budget. We have Ms. Romans and Ms. Harris from Central Services and Ms. Niederer from the Office of Law. This is a great bill. Glad to see we have some council co-sponsors on it. This bill will approve an amendment to the lease of county-owned property to the Robert A. Paschal Youth and Family Services to extend the lease term for an additional 15 years. Paschal Crisis Stabilization Services currently has a lease with the county for the use of 43 Community Place. It's the county-owned building at Crownsville Hospital Center. The current lease expires in April of next year. The tenant requested a 15-year extension. The county code requires terms longer than 35 months to be brought forward to the county council for approval. We are requesting this council approve the extended lease for an additional 15 years. If approved, the real estate division will proceed with the appropriate paperwork to extend the lease. You know, we've heard a lot today about the need for crisis services, both from police and from our presenter. The team at Paschal does a tremendous amount of work. A longer lease will give them the stability they need to remain providing excellent service to the folks of Anne Arundel County. So happy to answer any questions, but we are very excited to bring this bill forward to you.
Okay, Ms. Pickard, and then Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although I do think Ms. Hare was first, but I'll just go ahead. I was able to tour the Paschal Crisis Stabilization Center about a week ago. I learned a lot about how the center operates within our mental health system. It was really, really interesting. They do provide that short-term in-house, in-residence stabilization, which is great, since we learned earlier this morning that we don't seem to have enough hospital beds. The folks that end up at find themselves at Paschal are not necessarily in need of hospitalization, but they do need a very structured environment to stabilize their situation. So I would encourage everybody to go tour, and especially after our presentation this morning. So I'm happy to support this bill today. They've also invested a good bit of money into the building, and it would be unfortunate to I think they appreciate the knowing that they're going to be able to remain in that building long term as they're investing into the old structure. So thanks.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I am actually looking forward. I was able to get a tour scheduled in the next couple of weeks, so I am looking forward to going to see that. In the meantime, I don't see in our packet of information the base lease. I see the amendment, but I don't see the lease that it amends. Is it possible that we can get a copy of it? Or maybe if I missed it and someone wants to tell me, that I'm spacing out and need to just go recheck my email, let me know. But if we could get a copy of that, that would be great.
I'm happy to go ahead and send that over to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? Thoughts for discussion? Okay, seeing none, I think we should move on to bill number 2421, which is an administration bill.
Madam Chair and Council, I just want to let you know too, I'll reach out to Central Services and Samantha Harris to get a copy of that lease for everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Barron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have lost my talking points. Just give me 1 second. 2421. Pete Barron with the administration. Ms. Molden from Budget will be joining me, and Ms. Blair Klausmeyer from Office of Law. Bill 2421 is the creation of a community benefit district, a special community benefit district in SCBD. This will be a new SCBD for the Timbers community, which is located in District 3. The Timbers Civic Association approached the county in August of last year with a request to form a SCBD in an effort to maintain the community recreation area. The purposes of the district include the following: acquisition, maintenance, operation, improvement, development, protection, and disposition of community-owned property, providing recreation facilities, and to provide for the administrative and operating expenses incidental to carrying out the above. The association was able to obtain 68.75% of the votes in favor of forming the SCBD, so it meets the statutory threshold. The Timbers Civic Association has submitted a budget request for FY22 that is contingent on the passage of this legislation to create the district. As you all know, when a community decides to form an SCBD and gets the requisite amount of community support, they bring the request to the county, and we then bring it to you. Ms. Molden at Budget has done the necessary vetting to make sure that they have done this properly, and we will hope that the council will support the creation of this SCBD at the appropriate meeting coming up. So with that, we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do any of my colleagues have any questions? I think no one does this morning. Okay, that will move on to bill number 2521, which is sponsored by the entire council, which is unusual. Who would, I think Ms. Hare brought the bill in the first place though. So I will recognize you first if you'd like to speak on it, Ms. Hare.
Sure, I'll be super quick. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. Big thank you to all of you for signing on as co-sponsors. This bill is very simple. It changes one number in the code, and in doing so changes the ceiling for the rainy day fund from 5% of the county's budget to 6% of the county's budget. You all may remember we had a discussion along this lines about raising it from 5% to 10% during last budget season. The conversation, to my recollection, had been, hey, that's too big of a jump, and let's discuss it when we're not in the middle of budget. So I had made a note for myself to circle back, and I did in January and said, okay, let's take baby steps so that we don't impact any bond rating, and we can move kind of more slowly on it. And that is why you have the 6% in front of you. I'm hopeful that maybe, in another couple of years, we look maybe to 7%, things like that. So thank you all for your support, and that's all I got.
Mr. Barron, would you like to say anything?
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair, thank you. Unfortunately, our budget officer, who was set to join us for this work session, had a conflict at this time and wasn't able to join us. So I will do my best Trumbauer impression. And if there are further questions, he's happy to make himself available, and he plans to be here for the hearing. Ms. Blair Klausmeyer has joined us from the Office of Law as the sponsor, or the original sponsor, and now it's by the entire council. Noted this is part of a long-standing discussion, came out of last budget. this is, I think, the right approach to sort of step up our rainy day fund in a very responsible way, as the bill that was before us a little bit ago in the budget transfer bill, where we're taking us to 5%. We have hit the 5% level. We assume we will hit the 5% level pending the council passing that bill, and it just makes sense. This is something that bond rating agencies do like to see, that a council is being, that a county is being fiscally responsible. That has been reflected in our maintaining our AAA and our AA1 rating from both bond houses, and we hope that measures like this and continued responsible management that this county is practicing will protect those bond ratings and give us the opportunity to step them up in the future. But that is all for the future. In the meantime, this bill is a great bill that will help give county residents the reassurance that this council, this administration are being responsible with the tax money we are entrusted with. So with that, we hope the council will support this bill, and the county executive looks forward to signing it.
Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Allison Pickard, D2. I had been curious about what, with the 1.2 million transfer, it's going to put the balance of that revenue reserve fund about $85.2 million by my math. And then going to 6% would take the cap with the current calculations, I believe somewhere over between 100 and 105 million. I haven't done the math exactly. You know, I feel really good about the decisions that this council made last spring with such so many things, uncertainty with the COVID relief. So we are in really good shape with our revenue reserve fund, and increasing it is, I believe, incrementally like this, smart, fiscally sound thing to do. It's also interesting to know what it takes to access, you know, what sort of trip ups do we have to have in our budget year to access those funds. So those are all good conversations to be having now between now and our budget for FY22, because I think just, you know, for the general public to understand that we do have solid reserves, and we're all keen on making sure we add to that going forward incrementally. Thanks.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I have a flag somewhere. I'll have to find it. So I do have Mr. Theroux in the waiting room, who may have or has likely already done the math. So if he's able to come through, I think we can give you what we estimate the 6% will take the cap to. And just to be clear to everybody that is listening, this doesn't require the county to put in up to any amount. As Ms. Pickard mentioned, we have to be cognizant of why the rainy day fund exists. And what this will do is allow us, if the county's fiscal situation allows in the upcoming budget, to go up to that 6% number, which I think Ms. Pickard's range was accurate. And if Mr. Theroux is and has done that math, I'm going to ask him to pop on the screen.
Thanks, Stephen Theroux from the Budget Office. Ms. Councilwoman Pickard math was spot on. I think for next budget year, it'll be right around $105 million. Preliminary estimates are going to be. In the current year, it's a little bit less. Pretty much what Ms. Pickard said is spot on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Prisky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a comment, and I don't know if any of you saw the news about the current bond rating that agencies gave Anne Arundel County. So actually, even where we're at right now with the reserve, we're doing well. This obviously helps with that, but I want to make absolutely clear that the prior budget that was passed actually was fiscally sound. I know a lot of people don't get that, and they're like, well, you know, in terms of what's there. Now, obviously, we don't know where the economy's headed, things, but I think we're in a good spot. I think what we've done obviously matches, but again, that was great news that was recently shared about where we stand in Anne Arundel County. And this bill is going to even obviously help further by adding a little extra padding, right, from that end. But again, I wanted to point that out from prior budgets because we always look forward, we don't look back, and that's important as well. So thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing, hearing, nobody? Okay, then we can move on to, we need a good name for this. The Big Kahuna, can I call it that every time? It's kind of tired. I'll take suggestions. Bill number 1121, which is the GDP. Mr. Persky has his flag up. Mr. Barron, I don't know that you need to introduce this every time we talk about it, but you could take a break and we could just jump right in if you want.
Well, I think I do have a name, Madam Chair. Plan 2040. How about that?
Okay, fine. Mr. Persky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I figure because it's probably one of the most urgent ones that if it's okay, I'd like to talk about the amendment that I've shared with the council privately, but talk about it publicly, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair. And everyone else.
Please go ahead.
Yep, thank you. Again, Councilman Persky, District 4. For those of you that don't know, and of course we've been talking about this, there's some urgency to outlining what regional districts go when. And so, you know, in the plan, the council kind of has the final say with all these amendments, other things. So we were going through, and I kind of want to highlight and again, share, and I asked Ms. Schultz or Madam Secretary if they wanted to post it. Thank you so much. And again, this is my amendment, and I think it's important to explain it because I've talked to a few people about it and just for the record. So first of all, the Anne Arundel County Council obviously has to adopt this regional plan order and timeline. The Citizen Advisory Committee first proposed 2, 3, 4 in May of 2021, and these are regions, December 2022, 1, 5, and 7, and April 2024, 6, 8, and 9. There was also alternative options, and that was discussions with the Planning and Zoning Office and others, and that was 237 in May of 2021, and December 2022, 4, 5, 9, and April 24, 1, 6, and 8. What I propose is what you see here, and I want to explain the rationale. First of all, the Planning and Zoning Office released its copy of the regional review with the introduction of 1121. It's obviously incumbent upon the council to move on this amendment sooner rather than later so they can begin planning and process. These are the considerations that I chose, again, while creating this schedule. Based upon talking to prior council members and someone who did not sit on the small area advisory plans, but was an observant as a community association leader, I think it's important for the county council to have a balance. I don't think it's fair, in my opinion, to have one council member, entire area, go first. There should be a balance where you're kind of moving around the county, and that should be a priority, and where those regions are at. Also note that regions are not council member districts. For instance, if Miss Lacey and I, who would go first, nobody really wants to go first, but I'm willing to step up, and hopefully Miss Lacey will as first with Fort Meade, we would have to obviously proceed with that because obviously both regions would be covered. So like Jessup, Laurel, Russet, so on. Number two, if we looked at the number of applications, obviously the highest number of applications are heavy in North and West County, and those are the economic areas. But also, people need to understand that just because the economic activity or employment or jobs are at Fort Meade and NSA, that does not mean that there won't be growth in other areas. For example, and I brought this up on several occasions, and Colonel Nylon has actually said this as well from base. Actually, 20% of the employees that work at Fort Meade and NSA live in the Pasadena area, Pasadena, Severna Park. So again, when we talk about the impact, it's not economic just to that area. People obviously commute, drive, and so on. So again, number of applications are part of that. Urgency. So particularly around Fort Meade, so directly where Fort Meade is located, again, that is the highest number of applications. So obviously that most likely would be a priority. The other piece, which is so important because I've talked to some of my colleagues and you can obviously have your opinion, but you could look at this in 20 different ways, right? You could say, well, I think we should take the peninsulas first. I think we should take the economic development areas first. I think we should do your area, our area. The Citizen Advisory Council, which was appointed, which were citizens, and the alternative options were put out there. I believe it's incumbent upon the council to kind of come up with a hybrid of that plan. That way, no council member is taking a dart, throwing it at, or excuse me. It's basically not, taking a dart and saying, well, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that, and you do whatever you can. But basically, there is some organization order to those pieces. And that's why you see what was presented here. I do want to highlight, if you don't mind, Councilwoman Hare did call me after I first submitted my amendment. And I explained to her that regions 8 and 9 have the least amount of applications. And also, if you look at the plan, we're not slated to, they don't really want development. It's an agricultural preserved area. So I thought maybe going first. And then she had a concern that, evening it out. And that's why 5 and 9 were switched. But again, I want to be absolutely clear that this proposal is coming from both the CAC and alternative options. I think this looks at balance, applications, and I also think it's a fairness issue. Because I personally don't think that one council member should obviously have all theirs go first. There should be kind of movement around. And again, we're following that plan. So I'm going to stop there. Again, this is a proposal. I'm certainly happy to talk about it, but I think we do need to address this sooner rather than later for a couple of reasons. Number one, planning and zoning needs to start preparing, right, for these regional committees, stakeholder advisory groups. This is not something that we should hold off on. I know that there's been mentions about having a separate bill, but if we get this amendment in, they can at least start moving down that path. So again, I'm going to stop there. I hope my colleagues will entertain some discussion on this, and I hope we can get this moving. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Prusky. Mr. Barron, who should I call on for this type of question? So many choices, so many possibilities.
We thank you, Madam Chair. We do have the full team. I'm going to ask Ms. Pompa to direct us on these types of questions if after I get to take a little point of personal privilege and say my piece. So I want to thank Councilman Prusky. I think this is exactly why we are asking for additional work sessions, and we'll be talking more on Thursday about amendments. I appreciate the collaborative nature the council has shown in sharing the proposed changes, so we have a chance to review in advance. If you turn to page 70 of volume 1 of the GDP, you will see that the GDP does not actually come to a settled order. We provide 2 options, and it was always the intention of the administration to leave the final decision of the exact order to this body. And so happy to talk on the details. I think this is one of those cases where there's no right or wrong answer. Well, maybe there's some wrong answers, but there's no right answer. You have to balance a lot of the factors that Mr. Prusky, the maker of the amendment, has outlined. So the administration supports the approach in this amendment and would be happy to work with the council to answer any questions on the technical front. And Ms. Pompa, if you can add anything, or if I covered it, feel free to ask me to be quiet.
Well, I'm going to add one thing. Hello, good morning. This is Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. I just want to add here that section 182-103D of the county code, item, it's 2 and then small little I, the implementation process and completion for small area plans, it's under the purview of the county council. And, for that reason, there are a number of ways that you can analyze how you would want to go, what orders you would want for the region plans. But I think we are expecting the council to take the lead on that because they have the authority in the code.
Thank you. Ms. Feather.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Feather, District 5. So I want to thank Councilman Pruski for the ongoing conversation on this amendment. I've been looking at this as well to see what our other options are. And I haven't quite landed on any changes I may propose. I may not propose any, but when I'm looking at this and I look at the development policy areas map, and we have the critical corridor where that's where we want the targeted development, redevelopment, and revitalization, which I think is a priority for myself and some of my colleagues here and the administration. And then when I take that into consideration and look at the regions, I'm trying to figure out if in the schedule, we are prioritizing the regions that have the most critical corridors so we can kind of prioritize getting those put to bed sooner. So that's just where my thought process is. I'm not asking a question really. So thank you.
Does anyone have the page number for the critical corridor map? I'm just going to break the ice with a question like that because honestly, we're going to need to give each other cues as we go through this process because a lot of people are going to be trying to find this information. So
it's page 39, Madam Chair.
39. Thank you. Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Allison Pickard, D2. As my colleagues have stated, it is there's a lot to consider, and the one thing that we need to also keep in mind is that the region planning areas, those boundaries overlap council districts. So I know I stretch it, Councilmatic District 2 stretches into 3, possibly 4 regions in little bits. I mean, the majority of my district is in 3. There are a tremendous amount of land use change applications, and I know Region 3 has almost the least, I think, as a very developed part of the county already. But the development policy areas have each bring different decisions into the equation of the GDP and region planning. It's not just the critical corridor. We have critical economic, we have critical corridor, we have neighborhood preservation, peninsulas, even in rural and agriculture, we have constituents eager to make policy changes regarding each of those development policy areas. So I support the order that Mr. Pruski has brought forward. Obviously open to conversation about it. I haven't seen any alternatives. So thanks, that's my thought.
Anyone else on this topic or a different one? My dog has something to say. Mr. Pruski, go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair. I figure, the more we can talk about now and keep moving the conversation, I'm going to do it. I'm sorry. As the longest standing council member here, so please bear with me. Another amendment was a timing amendment that Ms. Lacey and I are putting forward. I think, again, if Ms. Schultz wants to put it out for public view, again, it's been shared with the council members. I know, Ms. Lacey, you are the lead, but if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about it. One of the things that was planned, though, was to discuss the second set of regions in October. And for those of you that don't know, I won't be here next council. Not because I don't want to or whatever, but it's term limits, all right? We have that per the charter. So one of the things that we are moving forward is a suggestion is to move that date from October to December. And of course, let me say this when it comes to this planning as well. I hope we meet these deadlines, obviously, and that's going to be incumbent upon the council members, the planning and zoning office, and the community in an organized fashion, because there are people waiting, and it was brought up before that the next general development plan obviously is going to come right after this. Again, so I'm not going to read this amendment, but I think this is a common sense kind of movement, just to let everybody know for that second set of regions. And again, I'll leave it out there for anybody's discussion. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions about this amendment?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Barron.
Pete Barron with the administration. We support this change. Appreciate the sponsors of this amendment sharing in advance and getting our feedback. We think it's a good amendment.
Mr. Pruski.
I'm going to keep going here.
Well, I don't know. I have something to say.
Maybe I'll eat dinner on Thursday. So the other mention, again, there's no amendment for this, but I think this is appropriate for discussion. Just to kind of hear from the administration and planning and zoning in regards to the stakeholder advisory committees. I know that, again, there's some discussion going on council members about how they're how they're composed and how that works. I don't know, and I'm not going to ask a show of hands how many people actually served on a small area advisory plan. We have a lot of new folks new to Anne Arundel County, but I was fortunate enough to be an observing party, not on the committee, but small area plans had 25 people. I don't know if anybody's shaking their head, you remember this, but there were 20 to 25 people on these groups. And I know that now we're kind of proposing a certain number, but I just wanted to kind of throw it out there. You know, if there's any willingness or if anybody has any thoughts that, you know, there's county executive appointees, maybe county council appointees, maybe we have a compromise, whatever it is, but I certainly support not having 25 people. that gets a little bit large, but maybe expanding the role in the community. Again, I don't have an amendment. I've talked to some of my colleagues though for transparency to see about that, but if anybody would like to address that, that'd be fine. Again, the way I see it, just so you understand from a development perspective, my career in terms of a public service started as a membership director of an HOA, right? I got the complaints of, you know, the tree got cut down or somebody has an issue with a neighbor, and that's how I started. And then when these land use applications came in many, many years ago with small area planning, also development in our area, you know, we obviously had to respond to that as a homeowners association. But I share that with you because there's a wide swath of perspectives, right? You have a developer, a property owner, Citizen Joe, environmental groups, the PTA president, the rec council. There's a wide range of people. Can we fit everybody on? No, but we want to be as diverse and as open as possible, because someone viewing, and you have this in your plan as posted by the admin, who's lived here 10 years versus who just moved here and starting their family or whatever else might have a different perspective. So again, I'll finish there, but that is something I'd like to continue the conversation on. Thank you.
Well, this is Sarah Lacey, D1. I'll pick up on that same thread because I actually have a few questions about the composition of the committees and also about the implementation action committees. So I'm looking at page 71 of volume 1, which is where I made my notes. I have, I guess, first question is, I was surprised to see that there apparently is not a provision for the council to appoint folks on these committees. And I was wondering if someone could explain why that is. Has this been done this way in the past, or you know, is this just an oversight? I think that just strikes me as something that just can't be true. So if someone has an answer, I'd appreciate it.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Barron.
Pete Barron with the administration. I'm going to ask OPZ to provide a little background on your questions, but just to flag, I appreciate Mr. Pruski talking to me earlier about possibly tweaking the composition of committees, and I understand you are meeting with the experts at planning and zoning in the immediate near future. So we haven't seen legislative language on this concept, but we are very open to working with council to develop some tweaks to this. I think it's very important, and what from where the administration sits, and I'll let the planning professionals speak in a second, that the folks who are involved in these committees are representative of the regional area that they will be talking about. It's important to have a diverse group of perspectives because we are talking about long-term planning. So the one thing that I will say, the administration will probably push back on is if the council seeks to narrow the variety of folks who are on these committees. We would want to make sure that it has the variety of opinions that are reflective of the communities that they will serve. So with that, I'll ask our folks at OPZ perhaps to respond to Ms. Lacey's specific questions on page 71.
Mr. Barron, this is Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. I may ask for some help here from Cindy Carrier in OPZ, but I do want to go back to the same section of the code 182-103, planning for future development. And part of the language under D, which is the small area plans, and this is codified, the composition of small area planning committees, which shall include no less than 9 citizens who are residents of the small area planning area appointed by the county executive. So that is the language that is codified. So what we did is we took that and we put some language in the plan to build upon what is in the code. And that is on page 71 in volume 1. And so we do say here that the committees need to be, they need to have diverse composition, and that there need to be at least 9 members to meet the county code. But that does not preclude 12 members, 15 members, 18 members. And so that we didn't add that into the plan because it is implied by the language that's here. In addition, it talks about the types of members that should be considered for each of the committees. Again, it's a recommendation or a suggestion. The committee could end up being different from this. But what we did on page 71 is create language to create a process to implement the code language in 182-103. And I don't know if Cindy has anything more to add. She may not.
Yeah, thank you. I just have one thing to add. Cindy Carrier, Office of Planning and Zoning, to get at the point, I think, of the council not having, the appointment authority because it's in the code as the county executive. We will be seeking recommendations from council for suggestions on committee members, knowing that, in the past, we've had a very difficult time in certain areas of the county of getting representation. So we would definitely want to have recommendations from council.
Madam Secretary, Madam Chair, sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to ask my follow-up question of, are you also perhaps friendly to suggestions for, additions on the criteria and categories of types of people, or the diversity, like adding in any socioeconomic measures to what's listed on that page?
Madam Chair, Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. Obviously, any change to page 71 would be an amendment proposed by council that we would evaluate. So if the council thinks that we need additional language, we will evaluate what you'd like to propose.
Thank you. Ms. Pickard.
Thank you. I have a question or two. So based on what the code says, I mean, is it then, is it the opinion of the administration that the council can't have, based on code language, we can't directly appoint to these regions? So that's question number one. But number two, and then let me just follow up with a concern about the CAC, the group that got us to this document. Especially for my community, we had very, very little representation on that group. And if you analyze the demographics of the CAC, you're going to find them concentrated in certain age brackets and in certain areas of the county. So I'm very, very mindful about region planning and how important it is to make sure we have diverse representation, as well as the folks that that are appointed, before they're appointed, fully understand the commitment they're making. And we really do our due diligence in creating dynamic, thoughtful, representative people in this region planning. I do have concerns. I don't know how we reach those goals, but I know that this council, from talking to my colleagues, want to make sure we are representative and we get really good work out of the region planning. And I know the administration shares those goals. It's just trying to figure out how we do that and what this current document needs to say in order to get there. Thanks.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Pete Barron. I just want to echo some of the things Councilwoman Pickard stated about the administration's position. We absolutely agree. We, Madam or Ms. Pickard, we have had conversations at length about the workload that is involved in this. For a resident to be a part of this committee or these types of committees, you know, they aren't paid positions. It's a lot of time, and the comments that you have made to me and other staff about the need to do some really good front end education for folks has been very well received, and I think everybody on this Zoom screen would agree that we would happily work with council to develop that kind of necessary, I don't know what you want to call it, GDP 101, regional planning 101 course that the volunteers on these committees will need to have a basic understanding of all that is involved in this plan. As to the legal question, if we aren't able, I don't believe law views this, but please, Ms. Klausmeier or Ms. Kenny, overrule me. We don't believe that the code is exclusive in preventing a council appointment or role in this. So we would definitely be open, as mentioned before, to discussing how we make sure the council has a role. And I saw Mr. Hughes nod his head vigorously when it was mentioned by Ms. Carrier that we do have trouble finding folks and always rely on the expertise of council members who are much closer to the ground in developing suggestions for membership of groups like this. As you all are aware, in Ms. Schultz's previous role and now Ms. Brown's for boards and commissions, we're often reaching out to council members. Hey, do you know anybody that would be good for X? That is no different than for these regional planning commission or committees. So law. If I've overstepped, please object.
Now, just briefly, Lori Blair Klassmar, Deputy County Attorney. So the way the code's written, all of the members would be appointed by the county executive. Pete's right, that does not preclude the council from having input. And so if the council wanted input into some or all of the members, that can be written into the plan. If the council wants some kind of direct approval, we do this with other boards and commissions where they're appointed by the county executive with the approval of the council, or if the council wanted to be able to directly appoint people to these committees, that would require a change to 18.2.103. So it just depends on the format that you want that council input to take. And we can certainly work that up in an amendment.
Okay, well, I think I'll be bringing an amendment to add citations to section 18.2-103D to volumes 1 and 2, because I'm an attorney and I like citations, and that would be helpful to, for everyone to see that there's a reason why it has to be the county executive making these appointments. We already covered that, and we're probably not changing that between now and the implementation. Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. I have two, I believe, are legal questions. The first is regarding the SRs, and I spoke to Office of Planning and Zoning last week on this, and I understand that a lot of it was due to consistency and making the map really follow lot lines, et cetera. But I've heard from community members over the concern on whether or not this was legal. And I'm assuming that because it is in Plan 2040 piece of legislation, that there is a legal reason or reason this was allowable to go ahead and recommend land use changes without the landowner first initiating the change. So if someone could speak to the legality of SRs.
I'm going to ask, sorry, Madam Chair.
It's fine.
Pete Barron with the administration. I'm going to ask either OPC or Office of Law to tackle that one.
Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. I would like help from law on that one.
And I will give that, but not, I'm going to get back to everybody if that's okay. And we'll give you the exact legal justification behind it. I'm writing it down right now.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, if I may ask just one more question.
Go ahead.
So I have had, I talked with Office of Planning and Zoning on one of these, but I have another situation in 5th District, Region 4, where there was a requested land use change, but there is back history on the property with Board of Appeals and hearing officer recommendations or decisions. How, from a legal perspective, is that to be reviewed or considered? Because some of the recommendations are in conflict with the determinations from Board of Appeals or the administrative hearings officer.
Madam Chair.
Whoever you'd like to answer the question, Mr. Brand.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Law to take a look at it. It's Ms. Pompa is unmuted, so maybe she. I'm not quite sure what particular item you're referring to, so maybe some of the folks on the Zoom have a little bit more of the background on that one.
Good morning, Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. Ms. Fiedler, can you give us a little more information on which one this is?
Yeah, I can send you, I don't have the Luca numbers in front of me, but I do have 2 files going, so I can send you that information.
Okay, because I think we would want to see the information before we provide an answer.
Perfect.
And I don't, hopefully I'm not talking for law, but I think they would feel the same way.
Yeah, Lori Blair, Class 1, Deputy County Attorney. I just want to make sure I understand kind of the broad outline. So you're talking about a LUCA with a recommendation that's different than some administrative ruling that's already in place. Is that
correct? Yes.
Okay. We'll take a look. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Ms. Fiedler, this is Lori Rhodes, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Land Use. Is that the Badger property off of Veterans Highway that we discussed about a week ago?
There is that one, and there is a second one in the Severna Park area that just came to my attention in the last week.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, this is Sarah Lacey D1. I have a couple of interrelated questions, I think. Speaking of LUCAs and SRs and pretty much every part on these pages where we have a right-hand column that says council adopted, can someone clarify what is the intent of what we put there? Since there are differences between when someone applied, say in a LUCA, and they want a particular use, and it could be consistent throughout that the recommendation for the final recommendation is consistent with what was originally asked for, or it's not. So if I say approve this, reject this, pass this on to later, how do we make sure we're doing this in a way where we're not miscommunicating since we can read it multiple ways?
Council Chair, this is Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. I'm assuming you are talking about the appendix in volume 2 entitled Land Use Changes. The narrative starts on page 267 and the table starts on page 268.
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, so I think I would like to ask Cindy Carrier to talk to this. The chair is talking about the final column in the table. And Cindy, did you have a specific thing you were looking for in that column?
Hi, Cindy Carrier, Office of Planning and Zoning. So that column would indicate the council's action. So if the recommended change that, is the staff recommended change, that's showing on the planned land use map that is before you is low medium density, and you don't provide an amendment, council action would be low medium density. If you have an amended, if you approve an amendment for that particular land use to something different, say commercial, then the council action, the adopted action would be commercial land use for that.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, you are viewing the council adopted column as by default, it's relative to the final recommendation column that's immediately to the left. And that if we can either affirmatively adopt, which would adopt what's in the final recommendation column, or we do nothing, and by our silence, we adopt that final recommendation column. Or we do something else, whether that is something previously recommended further to the left on the column or something different entirely, then that will be what goes into this council adopted column. Does that include, or will it be a separate category or same category if we were to say, it's not that we didn't do anything, it's that we don't want to decide this right now. We think this should be decided in the region plans. So we're not rejecting it. We're also not adopting it. We just don't think it should be decided right now.
I believe you would need to take an action. It would be the entire planned land use map that you're taking action on. And these are the specific changes that are recognized either through an application or staff recommended. So
well, I can give you a specific example. Staff recommendation number 9 is to create a transit-oriented development designation in the heart of Linthicum, which is currently already mixed use in the sense that you've got commercial, small business, and low, medium residential already within a relatively small area adjacent to the or nearby the Linthicum light rail stop. But this is a staff recommendation. And I know that the community opposes making any changes in Linthicum. This is just one of the changes that they oppose, but they, especially oppose because no one applied for it, right? The staff has suggested it. And what I'm considering is, well, how do I deal with this? Because if I bring an amendment to just outright reject this change, I don't know what the legal effect of that will be. What if somebody does come along in the future with a really great transit-oriented development plan that the community does like, versus now where they, there's no plan. So I think it's hard for anybody to conceptualize and accept, what those future changes might be and how they would affect the community. But their default is they're not going to want it. So I want to know, does that mean, that I should try to reject that suggested change? Can I say I neither accept nor reject that change? I think it should be considered again at the region planning process. Or do I need to say I reject it, but you should consider it at the region planning process? That's an example of, I think there are a lot of ways we can go, but I don't quite understand the effects of the different ways we could go.
Okay, so I may ask for law on this help, but if you want to reject, then I would, you would either have to propose something different or maintain what is existing, which in this particular case is commercial and low medium density. That's the existing land use that's on the 2009 GDP map. But that's the current land use for that,
right,
for that
and
area.
Small business is on
and then, make a note to review during the region plan process.
So you're saying there wouldn't be a legal effect of foreclosing future consideration of transit-oriented development change in the small region process if that were to go about that way. Okay, I think that answers my question. Ms. Radbian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lisa Radbian, District 6. I really just want to follow up and make sure I'm 100% clear because I had a very similar question. So if the council does not take any action on a land use change application, the default land use that would be put into the GDP or that will go forward in the GDP is the current land use, not what the change is requesting. Is that correct?
This is Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. I don't believe that is correct, Councilwoman Radbian. The GDP, the whole thing as proposed is before you. If a council person disagrees with something here and wants to put in an amendment to change it, that would be how you would change that portion of the document. That stands for mapping as well. But if you do nothing, then what is proposed is what would take effect.
So then the land use change applications as they are applied for, like what has been requested and what is in existence in the GDP, absence any council action, those land use change applications would be accepted?
Correct. This is Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. They would be with the staff recommendation for whatever land use has been proposed.
If I may, Madam Chair.
You may.
Pete Barron with the administration. I think Councilwoman Radbian, the way to think about this is what is in the far right column starting on page 268 would be what is then ported over. I'm sorry, the second to last column would be then ported over to the last column unless there is council action on it.
Can you go by column titles? Because I want to make sure you're talking about columns with text. Last column.
Yes, the final recommendation would then be ported over to the council adopted column.
But there's nothing in that column.
Correct. It would be, so the staff recommendation would then become the council adopted unless a majority of the council took action on a particular line. So for example, Luca 1, the final recommendation is low density residential. If the council decided to change this to say commercial, right, that would be an amendment and that would then go in that final column. If the no action, if the council took no action and was silent, low density residential would go over there.
So would it be correct to say that the default absent council action is Plan 2040 staff recommended land use PAB draft?
I don't.
One nodding and one shaking.
This is Sarah Lacey. I don't think so. When you read across that whole chart, and I remember watching from the PAB meetings also, you have to then consider that column PAB recommendation further over on the right. That was the recommendation they made, but there could have been a change between there and when the plan was finally introduced to us. So that's why my question is the far right column, maybe we should start giving these columns letters or numbers or something here, but they change. The far right column is the council adopted column. So that's what we're going to be filling in. The column immediately to the left of that is the one that is controlling whether it is what will happen if we do nothing on any of these charts. Whatever is there is what happens. So what our job is to then continue looking further to the left. There's what the PAB recommended, you know, if that matters to you, or you go further back and you say, okay, here's what the Plan 2040 staff recommended land use was when they sent it to the PAB. Maybe that's where you want to look, or you want to look further back to what is the current use, or if it's a LUCA or, you know, a requested change, then you're looking at what did that property owner request versus what ended up in the final recommendation column. Because the final recommendation column on that request, whether it was accepted or not, it's the final recommendation column that's the one that controls.
Okay, I think I'm gonna maybe reach out to Ms. Pompa separately, because I think I've got some incorrect information that I really need to clear up, and I don't want to take up everyone's time here.
Mr. Kaisigler.
Good morning, Steve Kaisigler, Planning and Zoning Officer. I may have a different perspective, but the first part is I would like our staff to work with Office of Law a little more on this question and come back, because I think we're approaching this from a lot of different angles. But from where I would sit, the council has to make a decision on every single one of the LUCAs. What you have in front of you is a recommendation by the staff and or the Planning Advisory Board. Those are simply recommendations. And unless you make a decision on every one of the LUCAs, the property would retain what it has existing. Our recommendation isn't a legislative decision, nor is the Planning Advisory Board. So that's how I would look at it. But I recognize this is a quirky thing. And if you'll allow us to spend a little time with the Office of Law, we'll have a more concise answer for you, hopefully on Thursday.
I was going to say, how about I'll give you until Thursday at 6 p.m. Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So I'm going to kind of transition into another topic here, and it's specific to Region 4, and it's on page 148 and 149 of Volume 2, and that is the Bay Bridge discussion on an additional span. Now, what I'm reading in these 2 pages is just a summary of where we are. What I don't see and what I'd like to see, and I'd like to know if it would be appropriate to add this to the document, in light of the fact that wherever a third span goes, whether it be Anne Arundel County, which in all likelihood it will be, north or south, we won't actually see a third span for, I would say, 20 years. So what I think is missing from this, and I'd like to work on, is adding what we as a county will do as elected officials with, and in coordination with our state elected officials to address as best we can traffic right now. I think that there are some other alternatives that have not been part of the discussion, and I'd like to potentially add support of discussing those to this document and just wanted to get feedback.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Barron.
Councilwoman Fiedler, can you just restate the page numbers? Sorry, it's a huge document and I didn't catch it when you said it.
Sure. Amanda Fiedler, District 5, page 148 and page 149 of volume 2. And again, what I'm suggesting is not a recommendation, because this is under MTA's purview, but just a commitment to look at alternative or mitigating tools in the short, which really is the long term, before we get a third span somewhere.
Mr. Barron.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Pampa.
Hi, it's Christina Pampa again from the Office of Planning and Zoning. Councilwoman Fiedler, we only have OPZ staff here today, and we are coming back with the full complement of staff on Thursday. So what I would like to ask is if we could push any discussion from staff on this to Thursday, when we have staff from the Office of Transportation with us.
That's fine with me. Amanda Fiedler, District 5.
I will add, actually, that's a good point to make sure everyone knows that on our morning work sessions, like today and in April, we will have OBZ with us. But on our evening work sessions later this week, and then again, April 1st, we will have a full complement of subject matter experts from the various departments to be able to ask our questions. So it may be that we get more specific into more specifics then, but I wouldn't preclude anybody from bringing up specifics now. If that's whatever your questions are, I think it's fair game to bring up whatever question you have in any opportunity that we have to bring it up.
And Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Barron.
Pete Barron with the administration, if I can also add, during regular council meetings, we also will have the full complement of staff there as well. So we will and are always available for emails and conversations on this side to answer questions. So we will do our best to make sure everybody is available within reason.
Well, with that, I have a question if nobody else does right now. Sarah Lacey, District 1. I've heard from a few different constituents a question I could not answer, but I'd like to be able to answer accurately. Did staff go and actually view in person the various sites that you made recommendations about? And what can you tell us about when those visits were made?
Chair Lacey, Christina Pampa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. I'd like to ask Cindy Carrier or one of the other long-range planning staff to answer that question.
Hi, Cindy Carrier, Office of Planning and Zoning. I'd like to defer to Mark Wildonger or Patrick Hughes, who were two of the probably 6 planners who actually went out in the field on each and every site. So if you could give them a little more detail, please.
Sure. Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong. The site visits were from February of 2020, correct? And
that sounds right. I was trying to look it up when we went out.
And what we had used was we developed an application where we actually we could use our iPhone or some type of iPad and actually go through a series of questions, trying to look to see, identifying what the land use was, if there was a business there. But it was also typically involved 2 staff members who participated in that just to bounce additional ideas off of each other.
So by way of follow-up, do you have notes or documentation that we could request and could be provided to us? Not that I doubt everybody wants to see everything for every change necessarily, but have specific ones. And I think it would be really helpful to know, okay, you went there, you asked yourselves certain questions. I'd like to go there, ask myself the same question and be able to follow up with members of the community who have those specific, concerns.
We do have all that documented.
I'm sorry, what?
And I'm sorry, Mark Wildonger from Planning and Zoning. We do have all that information documented.
Would it be, how could I get it from you? I guess, can I email to ask you for it for a specific, item?
Again, Mark Wildonger, OPZ, Cindy or Pete, what's the best way?
This is, let me answer. This is Steve Kai-Ziegler. We'll be happy to forward that information. If you'd like it on individual properties, we can do it that way. I'm going to assume that there's a pretty significant amount of information that was generated. We could do it for all of the Lucas, however you want it, but we'd be happy to share it with you.
Well, maybe one question would be, can you link it to the GIS link that you sent us to be looking at each of those applications? Is that possible?
Christina Pompa with OPZ. Madam Chair, I think we need to figure that out, and we can come back on Thursday with an answer for you of how we're going to do that. I personally don't know what format the data is in right now, so I don't want to make a promise that we cannot fulfill.
I understand and appreciate that. So Thursday then, add it to the list. Mr. Barron.
Thank you. I unmuted just to say something similar to what Mr. Kai-Ziegler said. And appreciate Ms. Pompa's point of view that we need to get what the data looks like to make sure we can provide it. But we are happy to provide the answers. It will just depend on what format we are technically able to do.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I will also add that part of my function is to work with Mr. Barron to help fulfill some of these requests for extra information. So I will definitely be doing some follow-up too.
Excellent. I want to make everyone aware it is 12:02. We will have to take a break at 12:15. And if we do that, we would come back at 12:30 and only go until 1 o'clock because of the 4-hour time limit for our captioner. On the one hand, I don't want to, leave any of everyone's precious time on the table where we haven't asked questions, but I also feel that, maybe we'll feel like we can all agree to stop at 12:15 because we've got a lot to do, a lot on our plates. So that's going to be my proposal. We can keep asking questions for 10 more minutes and then see where everybody is.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt again. I do want to point out that we have lost several council members here due to their work schedules. We are down to 4. I believe Ms. Radbian has to leave us soon too, so you'll be down to 3. So I would urge everybody to consider that in terms of making a decision whether to continue or not.
And this is Pete Barron. We are also planning on being here on Thursday, so.
Yes, but I turn into a pumpkin at 10 o'clock. Ms. Radbian, do you have a question before you have to leave?
No, I was just indicating that I really need to leave because it's noon.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Goodbye. See you later. Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for my own, the work session for Thursday night is scheduled from 6 to 8. Is there an expectation that we're going to go beyond 8? Do I have that wrong?
It's just scheduled to begin at 6.
Oh.
That's it. Yeah.
I had it. I was just being hopeful that it would just be a 2-hour event. I know I have a handful of amendments in the works that I'm hoping to figure out and share with colleagues so that we can come into that conversation, prepared. So I'm happy to call it a day today. Whenever, or I could launch into a tirade of questions.
Okay, Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Feather, District 5. I just have a general question, not for answer here today, because it may take more than just 10 minutes. And then I'm really done and can wait.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so this is a question that has come from constituents in the 5th District, Region 4, and it's how the different maps overlay. Obviously, these questions are specific to the region, but looking at planned land use on page 43, specific to Region 4, there's a lot of residential low density, residential low medium, there's some rural, and then you look at the growth tiers on page 45, and the majority of this region is in 1A and 2A. And then in volume 2, on page 129, there's communities of opportunity, which seems like it overlays those two previous maps. And I'm trying to answer the question, are these in conflict with one another? And I don't know the appropriate answer. So it may take some time to gather a response, but just wanted to put it out there.
Christina Pompo with the Office of Planning and Zoning. Okay, so we're talking about page 43 and 45, and then the communities of opportunity, which is in volume 2 on page 129. It's Cindy Carrier may be able to answer the relationship of the growth tiers to the planned land use map. The communities of opportunity relates more in the context of the GDP to the affordable housing discussion. And again, we don't have ACDS here today, but they will be with us on Thursday. So we could maybe answer part of the question now, but not all of it.
Cindy Carrier.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that waiting until we can answer the question in total would be better. Growth tiers is completely different from the plan land. The basis of them are completely different, but answering once we have the ACDS piece, and if there are any other maps that you are asking, because all of these are countywide maps.
Yep. Amanda Feather, District 5. That's fine. I think it probably is more appropriate to answer all at once, but maybe this is a nice heads up. So thank you.
Ms. Pickard?
Yes.
I know you have a question.
Well,
pick one.
I guess maybe this can be answered, and it's general enough to be relevant. If, as the region planning is going to be done in a, therefore comprehensive rezoning is going to be done in a staggered way over the next several years, what happens to the development application that comes in and is either based on old land use, new land use? What happens in the middle when a project is in the middle on a parcel? They either want to propose a project that's moving forward with the new land use, or they want to stick with the old land use or zone. We talked about this the other day, and I know there's this thing called administrative rezonings and things like that. I thought it would be helpful for everybody to hear.
Certainly. Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. So remember, land use is not regulatory in nature, but zoning is. Land use does inform zoning later on down the line. We envision comprehensive zoning to take place during each region plan. If a property ends up being in, let's say, the third group of region plans, and someone wants to move forward with a change in zoning now, then they have the option to do what is called piecemeal rezoning and visit the administrative hearing officer to pursue that rezoning outside of the comprehensive process.
Thank you.
I have a question, Sarah Lacey, District 1. I received a request from a landowner to change their land use, but they, missed all of the prior process. So they're coming today and going, oh geez, I better make sure I get my land use request in ahead of when we vote on this bill. So supposing that I agree with them on their request, how would I bring an amendment to be just to the overall land use map and providing as much information about that particular property as I can? Or do you have any other specifics that I would need to know to bring that in the correct way?
Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. Chair Lacey, we would expect that you would work with the council's administrative staff on an amendment that would probably get sent to the law office, and then the law office would talk to the Office of Planning and Zoning about preparing a small map amendment on an 8.5 by 11 to accompany the amendment. So that's how we would envision that happening.
Okay, that's the first time I've heard of a small map and amendment on an 8.5 by 11. You mean I'll actually be able to
it's an exhibit
what's on there?
Yeah, it would be an exhibit, so everybody is clear.
Right. It's an exhibit only because, and this is Steve Kai-Ziegler again, Planning and Zoning Officer, only because trying to do an amendment to the overall land use map is pretty complicated. And the only thing we do is ask for the ability to review it and give you our best recommendation before you made a decision.
Okay. I'm too excited that I'll be able to view it on an 8.5 by 11. It's Ms. Klausmeyer.
Yeah, this is Lori Blair Klausmeyer, because we've already done one of these. So it's a blow up of that particular, because you can see these little teeny tiny colors on the map on page 43. So it's a blow up of that. They can take that and you will see that particular property. Then ultimately all of those would be synthesized into the planned land use map that ends up in the final approved plan. So.
Okay. I don't want to hog the floor. So Allison, Amanda, did we lose Andrew? I don't see him. Any final questions? And if not, I think we will call it a day. Looks like no final questions. Okay, well, everybody keep plugging away, and we will see you on Thursday for our special evening work session, 6 p.m. Have a great day.